Welcome all. Hey,
Welcome.
Dirk.
Hey, Asheen.
How's it going?
Good. I took a nap.
I always know when you're taking a nap because when I text you, nothing happens.
Oh, shit. Did you text me? I didn't even look. I just grabbed my phone and set it up. There you go.
You don't look like you took a nap. You look
No?
fresh. When I take a nap, I'm like all my body parts
But
are
no, it
hanging
was
off.
it was a 35-minute kip. It was not a nap. I didn't sleep. I just kind of YouTubed and hung out with Laverne, and no, it was not like I fell into a deep sleep. Then I would have looked like a monster. No. I like little, because I don't sleep for hours at a time ever. So it's always an hour, 45 minutes. I can't sleep through the night. It just doesn't happen for me. It's rare. I can sleep when I'm on holiday, when I'm on vacation. The second I get to Europe, I have to knock out for like 8 hours.
You fly to Italy and it immediately fixes you, man.
Well, it does. But once I have to get it, because, we don't sleep on airplanes, as we've famously, been known for. Neither
Right.
you nor I sleep on airplanes because we want to enjoy the stuff.
Yeah, we want the champagne and the caviar and all of that fun stuff. Unless we're down back, then it's like, please just give me a bottle of wine so I'd fall asleep. Welcome, everyone.
Like this.
Yeah, sitting upright.
Yeah, which is shitty.
This is iBashers, guys, not regular content, as you know. We talk about pretty much anything and everything, myself and Dirk. Tonight we actually have some guests on, and we're going to talk about current events, for better or for worse. There's a lot of mixed feelings. My audience, I think it's fair to say, are split somewhere down the middle on this. I've received a lot of support and a lot of, yeah, man, go for it. Thanks for telling the truth. Thanks for being brave. And plenty of the opposite.
Well, reality is different for depending where you are. Your reality is different. Where you come from, regardless of how you've been indoctrinated. We've all been indoctrinated in our own ways, with growing up in a religion, our society, our cultures. We are who we are. So people are patriotic and sadly jingoistic and nationalists. And, it's a football match. Like I've recently heard someone say, it is you against them. And sometimes you're you and sometimes you're them.
Tim Wright is in around $5 super chat. Thanks so much, Tim. He will be moderating for this evening as well. Tim will be on later this evening with his usual show, so tune into that. Be polite, be cordial, be respectful on different opinions, and make sure to upvote and support the channel. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you, Timmy.
It's a funny thing, I've been following this subject now for years, along with the Tibet-China thing and North Korea and various other things. It's politics, it's geopolitics, and it's interesting to me. And as an Irish man, it's a lot of these things remind me of things that we went through in our history and so on. So I feel like I'm already versed in a lot of this stuff. I've been watching every few years. There's an explosion of this stuff. It was 2009. Gaza was being bombed, right? Then 2014, I remember there was some kids that were killed on both sides, and then there was a lot of anger, and then another explosion. That was I think the Israeli casualties were like 73, and the Gazans was like 3,000. The imbalance was comical as usual. And then most recently, in 2019, there was a march there on the Gaza border, completely peaceful. Just people waving flags and stuff, but they were being picked off, by IDF snipers from a distance, including press. And the outcry from the public about what's going on, and then of course the other side going, no, they deserve it, blah blah blah, usual stuff. So here we are again, 2023. all over again, same thing, just a little bit more intense this time, or a lot more intense. But I'll tell you one thing that's massively changed, in my opinion, and that's the protests. I'm seeing protests in favor of Palestine in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in Dallas, in Austin, New York, obviously, London, Dublin, clearly, because the Irish are famously, yeah, you know, for Palestine, because it reminds us of our whole thing. It's almost word for word, step by step, the same exact shit. And it's like we're seeing a film, remade by different actors, but the same story. But I'm seeing like protests around the world, heavy protests, despite the crazy attack that took place on October 7th, where you might think, anybody who's pro-Palestine right now might be like drawing the shades, going, "Fuck, what the hell?"
I am.
You know?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm utterly flummoxed by the execution of people at a music festival, and I watched a whole video and diagram about how they were cordoned off. I mean, it was a premeditated slaughter.
Mhm.
Now, what the impetus of that is for the listener and the observer to make their own opinion about. However, we can get into the etymology of what happened way back when in 2009, 2014, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
I'm reading an incredible amount of news of Palestinian people trying desperately to separate themselves from Hamas now.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, Hamas is an Islamic, retaliatory militant group that
Mhm.
officially is now the military wing for the people of Palestine.
Not just the military wing; they're the government.
They're the
They're
government.
the elected government of
They're the government, whatever government that they have, because it's it's such a wishy-washy thing that they've got going on there.
Mhm.
But it's been incredible to me. Like I don't see. I'm going to be so listening today to hear the stories and to hear the information, because I think we don't get a lot of great stuff. We have very liberal news. We have very conservative news. We have all regardless of your position on this situation. And let's face it, in our lives, people in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, we've been living with this Israeli-Palestine conflict our entire lives.
Yeah.
The only thing I remember as a kid was that there was a great commercial for like Israeli tourism, and I remember seeing I was a little boy and reading all the news about all the stuff that was going on there, and I said to my dad, "Wow, it looks like paradise," and he went, "Nah."
Okay.
I don't know. What do you mean, nah? Because it was such a beautifully done thing to just try to bring, obviously tourism to the country and stuff.
Sure.
Because it is geologically, it is one of the most beautiful places on earth, that area of the world. It's gorgeous. I've never been.
Do you think so? I mean, isn't it kind of deserty?
Well, it's both. It's the juxtaposition of sea
is it
and
Ireland?
desert.
Is it Ireland
Well,
kind of green?
I mean,
I don't know.
You're biased because
I'm biased.
You're Irish and you
We're
just
gonna
spent
compare
6 weeks there. I mean,
yeah. Like, is it rolling green hills and leprechaun? I don't know. Like,
no, it's like when people say I love Tucson or Albuquerque, and I always go, oh, I think of
Christopher Hitchens
Meth.
famously said, everybody knows I'm a big fan of his, as well as many other scholars and writers and so on. He famously said about that it was an obscene idea in the first place. He's a very pro-Jewish guy. He was married to a Jewish woman for many years. It was his last marriage before he passed away. But he said that it was absurd. He thought it was a waste of Judaism to do that to the people, take a famously academic people and throw them in the desert and tell them to be farmers, which I thought was very powerful. And it is very kind of deserty, the area and so on. But this is besides the point. It strikes a chord with many people's hearts because of the religious stories, the connections with the place. After all,
Bible,
Jesus Christ was born there. So it's going to carry a lot of import. But bringing it back to the topic of both sides, I've received a lot of hate and a lot of support. This time around, I would say a lot more support than hate, but plenty of haters, And I'm a scrappy dude. I just go at them, They come at me, and I'm like, yeah, and I fight them off. They're like mosquitoes or something. They come at you like at your ear, and you just do what you can, and you hear the same talking points over and over. The first guest tonight I want to bring in is a woman who I've been following actually for a while on Instagram, because she lives in Rome and she does tour guides around Rome. She's a board certified licensed tour guide and historian with almost 20 years of experience. She says, history is fun, scandalous, fascinating, and above all, important. Let me pull up her website here. Beautiful. And if we don't know where we have been, we cannot understand why and how we are where we are now and where we are heading. And she's received a lot of backlash now in the past week, so much so that she was ready to pull down her Instagram and get off the platform completely. Welcome to the show, Mitra, tour guide Mitra from Rome. How are you, darling?
I am good. Mentally tired, but I'm good. I actually just want to throw in a real quick correction. I will never take down my Instagram. I said that I may get off Instagram if these groups that have been targeting get their way, because that's what they've been threatening me with for 10 days, that they're going to take me down. But me voluntarily, I haven't backed down to any religious fanatical group yet, nor will I anytime soon.
Oh, I see what you're saying. They were trying to have you banned. I see what you're saying. Well, thank God for that. Oh, we lost you there on the connection. Thank God for that, Mitra. How have you been? How have you been coping? I know they doxed your phone and everything.
And they did. There's a website out there encouraging people to dox me big time. I'm circulating in private chats, and it started with actually a tour guide in Rome who runs food tours in the Jewish quarters, and then latched on with another tour guide in the Jewish quarters. Both of them who have a fairly big following. He started to hang me out. And the thing is that one of them has actually apologized to me today. He apologized. Turns out that apparently my followers sniffed him out. I did not say anything. They sniffed him out. They told me who it was. And then I guess the pressure turned right back. But I very sincerely invited him to have a conversation with me face to face. I said, you are more than welcome to repeat all the death threats that I have been given. And that I will give tours from 6 feet under, that all of you are in Rome and you're coming for me. I said, I'm happy to have the conversation face to face. And he said, I'm going through a hard time. I'm grieving. And I offer my condolences to him. I said, I am very deeply sorry. But what really bothers me with this person, and I told him, the same energy you put into wanting to dox me, I really feel you need to backpedal with the same type of energy. Because what they did, I tried to actually very simplified, because we know on social media everything has to be simplified, right? Mm-hmm. I can't give university lectures in reels. I can't give university lectures in stories on Instagram. So I did a very simplified explanation to my followers who were asking, can you in a clear way explain to me the situation about Hamas, about Palestine, and Zionism. And so they took these screenshots, but they completely twisted my words into me trying to explain the difference of these different rulerships and political fractions into me supporting them. Mm-hmm. And that became a complete, of course, psycho party, because then I get labeled with the ever so hard label, which is anti-Semitist. You are a Nazi. But I got everything from, then my phone number circulating. People were blowing up my phone, texting me about how I deserve to be unalived in this manner or that manner, or how they themselves are going to make sure they unalive me. And the messages came in hot and fast on Instagram. Now, I have to say that I think if I was younger, I think I would be more terrified of social media mobs, but I'm a woman in my mid-40s. And I don't really take internet bullies so much to heart. I think that they can go to a very specific place with.
Then what did you say? What did you say initially?
Yeah, let's get a little backstory so people have some context.
Yeah.
What did I say to piss them off?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Free Palestine.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess is that enough? Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
that's more than enough.
it's more than enough, but it's not something. It's not something that's new for people that follow me. So I think that my first big backlash on Instagram. So I grew up a huge support on Instagram during COVID because I was in Italy. Everybody wanted to follow what was happening, and then in 2020, the Black Lives Matter movement exploded, which for me, who is all about human rights and equal rights, for me, I was all about the Black Lives Matter movement, and that's where my DMs blew up the first time. Am I allowed to swear on your show?
Yes.
Yeah, you can do
Okay.
whatever you want. Yeah, absolutely. This is the
We do daily.
Just checking. So I had all these angry people at me who were like, stick to tour guiding, stick to Rome, do this. We don't want this from you. And I literally went out in my stories and I told people, I'm not your fucking show pony.
Right.
I said, get off my page or stay and accept that this is my page. I said, it's the pandemic. I've lost my job. I lost my income. I lost everything a human can think of. I will not lose my dignity and my values and my morals.
Right.
And then we took like a really big crash dive in followers. I mean, I was in free fall completely. And from that moment on, I would spend 3 years having a warning by Instagram for every breath I took, basically, that my account was about to be suspended any minute, because obviously I didn't stop talking politics there. But somewhere in between all of this, my following actually turned, and most of the people that follow me because I talk about politics. So history is 50% politics and 50% religion. So when people say you shouldn't talk about politics and religion, I am in the real wrong profession to avoid these two topics. And I'm in Rome of all of that. And I always tell people that if you think I take you through a tour of the Roman Forum and the Colosseum, and I don't talk about the Romans being the original white colonial settlers of Europe, you're wrong.
Certainly.
Because every white supremacist colonial mentality we have in the West comes from the Romans. We kept crowning holy Roman emperors until the last one was, gentlemen, do you know who was the last Roman emperor, holy Roman emperor we crowned?
Which one?
Benito Mussolini.
Oh, Mussolini. Was he really a Roman emperor?
Was he?
A holy Roman emperor. Yes, we keep crowning the holy Roman emperors. This is why Hitler and Mussolini took the 13th Legion of Caesars, the side-turned eagle that we all associate with Nazism and fascism. This is why any Roman tour guide, when we do a tour, we can't show you what a Roman salute looks like. Starts by your shoulder and goes up in the air.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So it was all about becoming the third new big empire. I mean, Napoleon was called the Roman emperor as well. This is why we have the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. I mean, everyone wanted to be the next Roman Empire. Everyone has it. I mean, we have 26 countries in the world that uses the eagle as their symbol. Even our state Lazio has the eagle as a symbol. And it's no secret that America uses the eagle. But the eagle is also tied with Zeus, the god of all gods, who transformed himself into an eagle. Hence, it's a powerful symbol in the Roman Empire as well.
I hope the viewers are realizing why I was intending on meeting with Mitra when I finally do a Rome episode, because no better person to show me around Rome and show me the history of Rome. That will still happen, by the way, guys.
I look forward to it. But I mean, I will never do a Roman tour that will glorify all that is Rome. I wholeheartedly believe that Rome as an empire deserves to be dismantled and cross-examined through the eyes of colonialism, because that's what they do. They colonize all of Europe, most of North Africa, and then also into the Asian continent. I mean, they don't rule 3 continents because they went and knocked on the door and said, please.
No one said please, though. To be fair, back in the day, no one said please.
I mean, no one did, and no one still does. No one still does. But we can't pretend that we're somehow both wanting to look up to the Romans and wanting to be a quote unquote more civilized society today. We're not. We just hide it better, in all fairness. And I think that propaganda has always existed, like it existed in the ancient Romans. I mean, look at us. We laud and applaud the Romans. We rarely examine the shadows cast from the pedestals. And even a lot of people in our history, you can be a hero and you can still be wrong. No, you can still have been wrong in our time frame and you were right in your time frame. Or
Sure. That's completely true, because of all of the statues in America, there's been a big backlash for the last decade about getting rid of Christopher Columbus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the South, getting rid of all the Confederate leaders. I mean, it's a bit of whitewashing history. I think we don't learn from our mistakes unless we know the history that came before us. I think that's a problem. Also, people were more barbaric back then.
They weren't.
They
I
were.
disagree.
You don't think that they were?
I disagree with you.
There was no laws
There
about raping women. There was no laws about, everybody
there
just
was
did it.
No, it's not about everyone just did it. There were rules of war have existed as long as there have been wars. What Christopher Columbus did was considered, even by people backing him, so atrocious that the man basically, long story short, gets fired. He loses his funders. He loses his backers. I mean,
Right.
There's atrocity and then there's extreme atrocity. No, and we can still learn from our history. I absolutely don't vote for taking Christopher Columbus's name out of history books. I do think that he needs to be dragged through the mud, however, and not be
Right.
lauded and elevated. I don't think the man deserves to stand on a pedestal in the literal sense of the word. I think absolutely we keep all these people's names in the history books as they should be. We just need to kind of revision how we look at them. Because mind you, before we cleaned the Sistine Chapel in 1982, after 500 years of burning candles, if you read art history books in the 70s, they will tell you that Michelangelo's a shit painter who know nothing about color and should never have been given all that space to paint that, no matter how good he was at the human shape. Then we rewrite the books in 1999. I'm like, oh my God, he's a master painter, most amazing thing I've ever seen. But we need to teach history in context. Even there, Sistine Chapel isn't famous because there's a bunch of naked people up there. The Sistine Chapel is famous because it's a revolution of humanity. No, it impacted how we even taught religion. We shifted how we teach Christianity. So here too, I think we need to look at the rhetoric that comes about when we talk about, the Gazans voted for Hamas themselves. So I would like to bring up that in 2006, the Hamas didn't actually win. They won 44.5% of the popular vote. And today, 17 years later, 53% of Palestinians are under the age of 18, which means that the majority of Palestinians today weren't even alive when this so-called election took place, right? And this was an election that also, when they ran on their original platform, it was anti-corruption and law and order, and the corruption on their other opponents that they were running on. And in their 1998 charter, that's the ones when they said, we want to eliminate all Jews. And then they had secularists join. And in the new charter, which last updated in 2017, you can actually see a very clear statement that the conflict is with the Zionist project and not with the Jews because of their religion.
Certainly.
So none of this is ever put into context, right? And while nobody condones what Hamas does, and I think this can be repeated a million times, like I have been repeated a million times in the last 10 days, nobody condones any type of violence. But have you, gentlemen, seen the photos of what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto after the Jewish uprising when they were rising up against the Nazis?
Sure.
Pretty rough.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so pretty rough, same thing. Nelson Mandela was on the terror list until 2008. He's today written about as one of the greatest freedom fighters and heroes that we have. But very few people supported his political party leading up to his own liberation. And I think that if you have been, what I think is also the biggest narrative lost in this conversation is that it starts with October 7. It does not start with October 7. And everybody, me included, expresses their deepest sympathy and condolences to the civilians that lost their lives that day on Israel's side. Nobody wants to see anybody hurt. But I ask you, who can be under occupation and oppression for 75 years and you expect them not to answer back? Brown people, brown and black people, because they need to be the perfect victims. They need to be the perfect oppressants, and they need to sit and suffer better than Jesus himself on the cross. And only then do they merit the white world's sympathy. This is it, because we have killed more children in 10 days in Palestine than that Russia has killed in one entire year in Ukraine. Why can we muster in the Western collective world so much sympathy? And I add, well deserved. I'm not trying to compare. I'm not trying to make separations. You absolutely should feel and suffer for the Ukrainian people. But why do you hail them as freedom fighters and not the Palestinians? Because we have dehumanized all of the Arab world, including in Hollywood movies, for decades, where Arabs are ignorant, Arabs are dangerous, even their language scares you, even their call to God scares you. And what, coming from Europe or the green lush hills of the West, and you look at places in the Middle East and you say, why would you fight for desert land? As someone who is half Middle Eastern herself, that desert calls to you like the ocean of the stars. There
Right.
are no places in the world better to see the stars than the desert. The desert is a life of its own. And ask people who live in the desert how well they know her, how much that the shifting sand dunes can shift around your life in there, no matter where it is that you live. And it
Yeah.
wasn't always desert. It became desert also because with the 1948 Nakba of 700,000 Palestinians being displaced, it's not just colonial settlers taking over their homes. They rip up a lot of their groves, their olive trees, they destroy their agriculture as well.
Yeah,
And
it was
then in the
severely
night,
reduced. Yeah.
it's severely reduced and it still becomes reduced. I mean, in all this, we are all occupied looking at Gaza, but meanwhile, in the West Bank, we have family after family being displaced out of their homes because the colonial settlers are taking over. Well, so to speak, no one's watching. And while we're speaking of Israel as a colonial state, I think it's also important to keep in mind that Israel themselves supported and funded Hamas in order to divide the Palestinians
Yeah,
within their own state
yeah.
in the 80s.
A lot of people are not aware of that. That actually Hamas was the friend originally, because the enemy, of course, was Arafat. Arafat was the first
Exactly.
guy to bring he brought he changed
Exactly.
the conversation from, because originally the narrative was that the Jewish people and Israel was the small guy. They were a small guy. They were the beaten down people, especially after World War II, naturally, and they had to run away to this tiny little land to save
But they
themselves,
didn't
a
run
safe
away though. It was
haven.
given to them by the British.
Of
The
course, it was
British,
good. No,
one of the British
I'm talking about
ministers.
that. Yeah, of course, you're pushing an open door with me,
I'm
but
sorry.
I'm just trying to explain the narrative as it is out there in the world. I'm aware of
Yeah.
Theodore Herzl and 1897 and so on. Of course, it predates World War II by a lot, but a lot of people have that narrative in their head. And Arafat changed the narrative. He was the first to change the narrative to actually, there's an even smaller people, and they're paying the price now for this deal that that Balfour dreamt up and the Brits dreamt up. There's a smaller people, and he was the peaceful, smiley guy, and they didn't want that. They wanted the angry-looking Arab who's like, "Whoa, jihad!" They wanted that because that sells so much better in the West. Like, he's the enemy; he doesn't care about life. Whereas he was like such a little smiley guy, and he'd shake everyone's hand and so on. And that doesn't work, because you don't want that face out there, because then people might say, "Hey, he's okay. Like, what's the problem?" When Hamas came along, they were like, "Okay, let's pit these guys against each other." And a lot of fuel went into Hamas. Now that Arafat is gone, and the PLO are like, whatever, Mahmoud Abbas, he's just such a puppet for the West now. It's like now they have to deal with the shit that they just created. Once again, just like the Taliban against Russia. It's like the
Yeah.
same, it's like history is repeating itself over
But it's
and over.
amazing because people are not aware that Hamas is such a creation. Like they was both funded, I mean, there was funding, there was backing. You have Yitzhak Segev, who's an ex-military governor of Gaza, and then you have Almer Cohen, who was ex-governor of religious affairs. They admitted that it was a creature of Israel. And in 2007, there was a diplomatic cable that revealed that then IDF intelligence chief, Amos Yadin, he said Israel would be happy if Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, because then
Oh yeah.
IDF could then deal with Gaza
Oh yeah,
as
this isn't conspiracy in any way at all. It's completely
no.
Oh yeah.
No, because then they could
Public
deal with it
information.
officially as it's public information. It's absolutely not a conspiracy theory. It is very public information. It's a very well documented source. So in 2007, because then they could deal with Gaza as a hostile state. That was the whole point of the whole thing.
Right. So, like, picking up the narrative where it happened, like, you've obviously been following this subject closely for a long time. I certainly have too. I've always been involved in,
I think there's a photo of me. I think there's a photo of me. I'm like 2 years old in a pram on a demonstration with my parents, and I'm wearing like a kufi in my pram.
So your really quickly, your background is you're Iranian, Norwegian?
No, Finnish.
Finnish.
Yeah, so my father is from Iran, and so I'm that second generation of immigrants who've never been able to return because of the terror regime over in Iran at the moment.
Mhm.
And my mother is from above the Arctic Circle in Finland with the indigenous Sami people, which is
The
why I'm also so
Samis, yeah,
dark.
right.
Another exterminated indigenous people.
Right. The Sami. We all know about the Samis. Yeah, that was crazy.
So I think
That's
it's in my
northern
blood
Scandinavia,
to
extreme northern Scandinavia, right?
extreme northern Scandinavia. So I think it's in my blood to just resist this kind of, I would say. But I think it's also
Right.
just sorry if I'm allowed to loop back to like the origin of Zionist texts. I mean, you know this, and maybe just the general narrative does not know this, that in the original writing of the Zionists, in the original foundational text, they actually call the Zionists call themselves colonists, and they call the Palestinians natives.
Yes.
And Israel has a long history of being involved with genocides, like the Maya population in Guatemala in the 20th century, and they also have a history of genocide and violence in Latin America
Uh-huh.
The
involving
Jews
drug
do?
wars. The Israelis do, yeah, the Israelis.
Can you enlighten some of us? Because I'm not aware of what that is.
It's also all public information. It's also all public information that you can easily find. That
What is
there is
Israel
all
doing in South America exactly?
they involving drug wars and genocide. Fund is money. Follow the paper trail. Always follow the money trail. So
I
they don't
believe in that.
have
I believe in that. I believe in that.
but
Also,
it's not, I will repeat, it's not conspiracy theory. It's out there for you to find. There is
mhm.
extensive documentation on this.
No,
It's
but
very
I
easy to
believe
find.
no. But what I'm saying is, I believe in the follow the money, the paper trail, the money.
Mhm.
Always follow the money because then you'll find all the answers. I think that's a very good rule to go by in general. So where are you going to go from here? Like now that you have all this hate, they've released your number, they're threatening you. They've said you alluded to all sorts of crazy things that they're saying all sorts of horrible things. I believe you have a partner in your business who is also threatened. Is that correct?
No, it was another someone else who's in Italy who also speaks out about this, who works within the same fields as I do, and they actually managed to get his account down. But
Oh
he's
wow.
back up with a new backup account, which is a good thing to see. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of threats. It's a lot of, I have to tell you honestly, like for all the fractions of people that I regularly seem to piss off political or religiously, what I have to say with this is a very organized like hive mentality, and it's
Yes.
very borderline bot behavior on the occasion. And I
Right.
told them flat out that if you think that you need to kill a Roman historian and that it's somehow going to either garner people to your cause, or if you think that's going to make a difference, then this is absolutely mental. Like it's mental. Obviously, all the people around me are super concerned and they're super worried because while death threats are nothing new for me, this
Mhm.
has been on a very intense level. But I do think that this vitriolic type of behavior really comes from this other narrative of we are the victim, yet we can bomb everyone else while we're being a victim. And so it's the
Yes.
same thing. They are victims in my messages, and yet they're threatening to kill me. But they're the victims, and yet I deserve to die.
Yeah.
So what
Who are
should
they? Who's doing the threatening?
Zionists?
They're
They're
card
Israelis.
carrying Zionists. I mean, they're just
They are Israelis. They are Israelis. I would say that all the messages I've gotten from people that identify as Orthodox Jews or they say I'm a Jew, I live in Israel, I do not identify with Zionism. I do not agree with this government procedure. I
most
do not
don't.
agree.
Yeah,
Exactly. And I'm
most
fully
don't.
aware of this. And I speak about this on my Instagram quite a bit as well. Most don't, and I'm aware. But the ones who do, I assure you, are really, really vitriolic,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's absolutely like there's not even any reasoning with them because they have no interest in dialoguing. They simply want to browbeat you into accepting that what they say you must obey or be scared enough to obey.
Yeah. Yeah, they're heavy, heavy zealots. We just heard the other day
No.
one of our co-hosts on a different show, a much lighter show that we do on a Monday night. She's actually out in Oregon, and they threatened her as well, and they called her a terrorist because she's on a show with me, and I said Free Palestine, and I said that the Irish people famously support the Palestinian cause, or at least sympathize with the Palestinian plight, and that is absolutely true. By the way, we always have. It very much rings bells with us. The whole thing. But yeah, they came for her. I mean, they knew coming to me they'd
Yeah.
just get a fist in their face, but they want to go for the weaker spots. Not to say that you're weak, but you're definitely, I can tell that you're more of a peaceful person than I am, and more of an aggressive, fight back. And you're more kind of like, okay, you guys can say, because I saw your posts, you guys can say and do whatever you want. It's not going to change, blah, blah, blah. You kind of take a more neutral and peaceful and loving
Well,
position.
I think actually in this case it's important because there's a time and a place where you can tell people to go fuck themselves,
Right.
and then there's a time and a place where it won't help. I think, for example, like when people come at me just because they're bigots and they're racist, then I tell them where to go and how to get there. I mean, full on.
Mhm.
But here's the thing, I didn't even say the things that I've been accused of saying. And so I
Mhm.
understand that people are reacting from a place of hurt. People are reacting from a place of grief. And
Uh-huh.
I think that some people may feel that there is not space for their grief to be held and that's overlooked.
Right.
And people are tendentially very reactive in their grief. And that's also understandable.
Yeah.
All right. But I think that when you come to the point where, like, I get messages about, we want it all, we want all the land, we don't care, like, the Arabs are dumb, we just want everything for us. Or when I get, like, just messages that are just,
Flatten them.
yeah,
All of
about
that.
flatten them, derogatory. I mean, the thing
Mhm.
is, like, the thing is, in the end of the day, the very foundation of Zionism, and if you have truly drank the Kool-Aid, I mean, you are through and through racist. No, and I mean, the first time I traveled to Israel, I've been to Israel 4 times in my life.
Mm.
And if you deny that racism is rampant in Israel, you haven't been to Israel, first of all. Like
Last night I have Al Jazeera on 24/7, in the background as I'm working away here, and last night the news came out about that hospital bombing, and it's so funny because just like in the chat we have next to the screen right here, with lots of different opinions, I can see them all coming through. Al Jazeera have that too.
I'm probably glad I don't see them, right?
Yeah, don't want. Yeah, you don't want to see half of them. You don't want to see the other half. You'd be fine with. As usual, it's a diametrically opposed argument. But they have the chat on Al Jazeera. Man, oh man, you want to see some of that. I mean, at first the first report was like 500 children were killed, and one of the comments came up 500 monobrows. Like that. Like this
What?
is the level
Yeah,
of
yeah,
racism. Like
it is.
racism is completely unchecked when it comes to your Israeli indoctrinate, or just your devotion. It's like
Yeah.
racism, you get a free pass.
But I think
Once
that's
you stand with Israel, then all of a sudden you can say all sorts of horrifically racist things, and boom, it's because you believe in the chosen people. I mean,
but
there's
have you
something
seen that
really going on
video?
here, guys. Hmm?
Have you seen that video from 1986 where Joe Biden says that Israel
Yes.
is the best investment that America has ever made? And was there not Israel, America would have to invent Israel to protect their interests in the Middle East?
Yes, we've all seen it. All these
Okay.
videos are circulating. The video with
And
Golda
these,
Meir, video with Golda Meir speaking about that she lived from 1921 to 1948 in Palestine. She was a Palestinian. And I keep getting people writing to me going, Palestine never existed. And what the hell is a Palestinian? Okay, go ask the first female prime minister of Israel what a Palestinian is if she were alive today, because apparently, according to one of your queens, if you're a Zionist, she certainly should be one of yours. It absolutely existed, and she carried a
but they're not even
Palestinian
allowed.
passport.
Exactly, but they're not even allowed to talk about the Nakba. They're not even allowed to teach
Right.
it. So I'm not as surprised that people don't know about it. But the fact of the matter is that after World War II, when the Jews are brought into Palestine, the Palestinians are giving them basically asylum, and they're giving them the place, come into our homes, we'll take care of you. And then imagine your house guest the next morning kicks you out and says, this is my house now.
Right.
And it's been continuing ever since. And of all the thousands of Palestinians that I talk to on a daily basis, because I get more messages from them than anybody else. Not a single one of them has ever, in all the years that I have been supporting for Free Palestine, have ever said, I want to see all these people dead. I want bad things for them. They just
Yeah.
want their freedom. And I think the reason why also Israel sponsors this birthright program where they sending teenagers for free on the expense of the Israeli state to come and see that this is your birthright and you can come here.
Yes.
We all know that when you're young, you're more easily prone to being a zealot. And this is not meant to be disrespectful to all the highly educated and very talented and brilliant young teenagers around the world. But a lot of young teenagers are easily caught into our rhetoric. And I think that's where we sweep in like the first wave that we keep catching.
Sure.
And then
it's
then
like
we
Father
don't.
Christmas. It's the same thing. You're a
Well,
little kid,
it's-
your parents tell you that, and you just assume it's true because they're the people you look up to most in the world. You can't be blamed for that kind of stuff. Listen,
I
I
mean, to
just
be
wanna-
fair,
I-
to play
I
devil's
just-
advocate, I watched a son of an ISIS guy cut someone's head off
right.
on the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand
It's true of
this, but-
every
but-
extremist group in the world is going to program
it
their
is
children to
true.
believe exactly what I believe. That's what they're going to
It
do.
is true.
Yeah,
It
it's
is true, but
tribalism. It's teams. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you would
To
not
be
have
fair.
you would not have neither ISIS or Hamas if it wasn't for oppression. If it wasn't, these resistance groups are born from somewhere. They're not born from a natural
all
existence
resistance
of their
forces
region.
are born from something.
No, they're all born from something, and we have to admit, for the fact of the matter, that Israel is really an extension, another U.S. military base in the world. There is no
Yeah.
other government that has so many active military bases, so many hundreds of thousands of active military. I don't know a single country that could plant their own military base in the U.S. and just be chill with it.
Yeah,
So
it's
I think
modern imperialism. We know
no,
it's
I mean,
very true.
it is, but this is why we have Italy, France, Britain, Germany, all bed buddies. Because I think in all this conversation, the rest of the world needs to know that we in Europe, we don't only criticize America, we criticize our own governments. I am deeply ashamed to live in a country like Italy where my government is supporting all of this as well.
I wanted to
Now,
ask you
granted-
about
How
that.
do you live in it? Why do you live there? And how did you come to live in Italy?
Oh, I got
'Cause you're not-
headhunted
you're
to
not
be a tour
Italian,
guide.
though, right?
I got headhunted. Well, listen, I'm the kind of person that, seeing as I am what racists would like to call a mixed breed, I can get told in every single
I think
country to
mixed
go
is the
back home.
politically correct terminology now.
No, they like to call me mixed breed, but I can also be told to go home in every single country, go back home, no matter where I live.
What
So I
would be
came-
home for you though? Would it be
Nothing,
Finland?
right?
Where were you
No,
born?
I'm actually born and raised in Stockholm, Sweden.
Oh,
Look at
And my
that.
parents met in Greece, in Athens.
very
Renaissance
international.
girl.
Yeah, so
Citizen
for
of the
me-
world. Citizen of the
So
world.
for me, when I teach my students, I talk about this a lot. In belonging nowhere, you belong everywhere, and I do believe that is the way for humanity. We
Now-
are tying our ideas behind an idea like a Zionistic ideal of nationalism is not the place to be, because and the reason why other colonial settler states like America, Australia, Canada, Italy, France, Britain, Germany back them up, because none of these colonizers want to deal with their own colonial history.
Of
How
course.
could you
I
want
said
to
that.
dismantle
That was
a
my first
colonial
point.
settler
Yeah,
state
that was my first
being
point
one
that got me
yourself?
in trouble because I mentioned that the occupiers support the occupiers. So
But
over
that's
10
true.
Downing Street in London, they had the Israeli flag. I'm like, well, of course, because they took over half the world. That's no secret about that at all. And half of the world had to fight them out, including the Americans and we Irish and so on. And of course they're going to support the occupiers. Now, before I let you go, Mitra, and thanks for doing this, I do want to ask you about Italy specifically, because I'm in Italy and you're in Italy. We're about 3 hours train ride away from each other. And how do you feel about, of course, Italy, Meloni, of course, Giorgia Meloni, the leader of, the fascist party.
She's still there,
Fratelli
huh?
d'Italia. Yeah, she's
She's
still
had
there.
her 8 months, hasn't she?
I know, right?
all
I
you
was
normally
hoping for
get.
new
I mean,
personal
8 months
best.
is
I was
usually when they
hoping
throw the fascista out, right? What the
Yeah,
hell?
I know.
I was hoping for new personal best in fall of government for us, but apparently not.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, listen, let me ask you this, because, I know I've spoken to my audience. I've met a lot of fascists here in Italy. It's not a bad word in Italy for some reason. It's a strange thing. You call somebody a fascist in another country and they think you're trying to bend the truth. But here in Italy, you have people going, sono molto fascista. They're actually proud of it, especially
And you're in the
Verona.
north.
I'm in the
You're in
north,
the
which is
north.
there's a lot of fucking fascists up here. Not in Venice as much, but there are some. But anyway, these guys, you would think these guys talk about Mussolini and fucking Hitler being a genius and stuff, like terrible, disgraceful shit, like you wouldn't repeat to your friends, right? But then they turn around and support Israel. Like, don't you think don't you think they'd be against, the Jewish people? But apparently not. I think they hate Muslims more.
Yeah,
or
but
they hate Arabs
here's
more.
the thing, that the Zionists in Israel are no longer the Jews that they think about. They are now the extension of the American.
It's white, right?
It's the super boy bands we want to look up to.
Yeah.
And if anything, of course, they hate Muslims more. I mean, Europe has always had beef with Muslims, where in reality, between the two countries, who has vilified one more is always the West, who has vilified the East more. I mean, from movies, from rhetoric, how we speak about people, and rhetoric matters. And if people are uncomfortable with seeing a white child dying, a Ukrainian child dying, an American child dying, an Italian child dying, but you do not care about Palestinian children or all the Armenians, because in all of this, Armenians are being completely overlooked. We talk about genocide, and the Armenians are even in more silence than the Palestinians. And I really hope their time comes and the international community sees them as well. So Armenians, please know that we see you and we hear you. I mean, or Afghans or Syrians or Iraqis. I mean, if we don't value their lives equally, then we're not looking at this from a humanistic point of view. We're absolutely not.
So you think at the base of it with Meloni, it's probably racism, right? Pure, just old-fashioned, like they're the whites. They don't even see them as Jews. They just see them as whites. They see them as modern, industrialized whites versus the backwards savages, just to make it simple.
Well, exactly. It is how they're seeing it. I mean, Meloni and her goons are not exactly soft-spoken about what they think about people that are immigrants. I mean, the fact that Meloni has been media trained very highly by people with American White House background experience. I don't know if you know this. She has been highly media trained, and she's very much put in place for the right time. And it's absolutely absurd that the first prime minister of Italy is a woman who does everything she can to take away rights from other women.
It's
and will not.
So crazy. Okay, well, listen.
I
don't want to keep you any longer, Mitra. It's been wonderful to have your perspective on it. I'm sorry to hear that you were going through, or you still are going through, what you've been going through. It sounds like really heavy stuff. I hope the phone calls.
It is heavy. It is the phone calls, the texting, the death threats, the wishing that people will rape me and murder me and terror attack me, and I should go be a whore for Hamas. I think this is a rhetoric that has no time and place at all. I think that in all of this, I do want people to know that everyone has the utmost sympathy and condolences for all the Israeli lives lost on October 7th. Mm-hmm. But it's a pressure cooker situation in Palestine, and you cannot accept resistance to not pop out. Nobody wants innocents to die, but the response to this cannot possibly be justified. And the fact that there are Israelis that think that their government is allowing humanitarian aid in, and that their government is telling people that they can have the opportunity. This is what's her face called. The woman who is
Nikki Haley.
No, the Israeli version that's in the UK. CP, what's her name? I can never forget. Mm-hmm. But she said that people had the opportunity to move to the south. You are displacing people from their homes, bombing them on their way there, and then now this whole story with the rocket in the hospital. I think it's just pure magically amazing, though, that Hamas, who has always had like this DUI home rocket factory that can basically splutter up a few rocks, all of a sudden turns into a US-grade superstar missile the second it misfires on home turf. I think it's brilliant. And the same thing, that this new radio thing that has been intercepted. I mean, it's easy to spread that you have radio evidence, but if you speak Arabic and you listen to this stuff, it is so wrong. The intonation is so wrong. The context is wrong. It's super stiff. It sounds super scripted.
Listen, they have an incredible media machine. We know that. We
Thank
don't
you.
hear from Hamas and those boys. We hear from the other guys. They're entrenched
but
in the
also
media
if it's
Well,
a
we
machine.
heard
Hamas
from them on
reporting,
Saturday.
yeah, but how do you, okay, this is another question. That border is so protected that if a dog as much as take a piss on that fence, it gets shot. Do you
Yeah,
understand? It's so protected. There's a 19-year-old with a machine gun every 5 meters, every 15 feet. So
that's
you
right.
mean to tell me for 6 hours, you're like filing your name somewhere in the other corner, you're like, I don't know what's happening over in that all of a sudden after all these 33 years. I have no idea.
It is very
I mean,
strange.
it's magic, and then you don't know where Hamas is. You're worried about your hostages, but you're carpet bombing the very place you say that they're keeping the hostages. Again, I repeat, you don't know where they are, but then you can intercept them talking, but you're bleeping out their names. Why would you protect them then?
Yeah.
I'm just asking. It's quite
So,
magical
so,
and fantastic.
so, what do you think happened there? This highly protected border that no one could get over, Hamas apparently got over and did all their deadly deeds. And how do you think that actually occurred? How would anybody get over a wall that's not penetrable? Did the Israeli government open up the floodgates and say, "Come on out, so we can blame you for it"? Is that a theory?
I don't think that's my fear. I think that is a theory that exists even on the Israeli side, which is also why you have a lot of the head newspapers of Israel calling for Netanyahu to step down. They're calling him dangerous. They're calling
Yeah.
him a
Well, I
criminal.
mean that. Who doesn't know that?
Yeah.
But I
Well,
mean, his
it
own
was reaching a
people,
peak
his
though,
own
Gert.
people,
Yeah,
like his own
his own people
people.
were about, yeah, it was reaching a peak and there were protests already set up. And Ben Gavir, his right hand man, that guy is a fucking maniac. He's so radical. They wouldn't even let him serve in the idea. Everyone in Israel
Yeah,
they have the draft. Everybody has to serve, right? They
yeah,
wouldn't even let him serve. They were like, don't put a fucking gun in his hand with Palestinians. He'll just shoot them indiscriminately, and go, the Torah said. They wouldn't
yeah.
even let, as radical as they are, they wouldn't let this mega radical. That guy now is Bibi's right hand man. And I think a lot of Israelis are going, oh, fucking hell, come on, this is getting crazy. They were ready to fucking protest. Rumors are there were warnings coming in from Egypt of an impending attack, and they were ignored. So people are getting really pissed off. They're asking him to stand down. And people are asking for Mahmoud Abbas to stand down as well for being a weak leader as well. It's going to be very interesting how this pans out. But
I
again,
agree.
yeah,
I just want to wrap up by saying, I think I think there wouldn't be the first time that we allow something bad to happen in order to have an excuse to retaliate. And I
yeah,
do think it's very important to also remember how the Israeli PR machine works, such as when they shot the American Palestinian journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. They lied about it. Then there's an investigation, and months later, when it's out of the news cycle, they were like, "Yeah, of course we shot her." And then this is what everyone already knew, and this is what all the Palestinian journalists on the grounds were saying. But 100 of them doesn't matter as much as one hearsay on the Israeli side. And so I think the same thing with this hospital. I think it is Hamas has never had this type of firepower in their entire 33 years of their career.
Hamas would love
Never.
that. We saw the rocket.
If
Hamas
they
would
had,
love those kind
exactly,
of rockets.
they would love them.
Oh my
They would
God,
love them.
Hamas are pathetic in
But
comparison to that
but
thing.
they don't, they have literally like this DUI build yourself rocket that splutter at most, like
Yeah,
a little type. And the
yeah,
fact that the remnants of the rockets that have been found, that has been photographed, these are the US style type weapons that are being shipped into Israel. But I also find it odd that we're super specific with knowing what Hamas does 1 second, and then we have no bloody idea for the next 5 minutes what they're doing. And we're super concerned that they're hiding here. So we are bombing. That wasn't the first hospital that got bombed. They had been bombing kind of hospitals consistently. Right now, some hours ago, they bombed a school, a
yes,
UN-based school. They're
yes.
targeting press. They targeted press on the Lebanese border. They're targeting the Egyptian border where the aid convoys are, despite saying for 10 days they're going to let them in. They're not. They're even dropping bombs there. They're bombing people while they're moving. And I repeat, all these arguments, I want people to remember, but the Palestinians elected Hamas, a Hamas that was created by Israel, with little other options left around you and all other people not doing anything for your situation. And again, 53% of people in Palestine today are under 18, which means that they were not even alive or they were just born when this election happened. It is not theirs. the election.
By the way,
We
this
understand.
this is a side note. Do you know why half the population of Gaza are children? Not because they're all having so much love in the bedroom. It's because the life expectancy is so low in Gaza. It
Yeah,
wouldn't be
it is.
2.3 million people. It would be 6 million people. But it's
Yeah.
so out of whack because the life expectancy is so low. The kids are growing up and then they're getting shelled to shit. It's basically
Yeah.
it's space invaders. That's what's happening. Anyway,
I
listen.
think
Yeah,
thank you for having me. Thank you very much for having me.
fantastic.
I am happy that we have a couple of governments in the world that are the only adults in the room right now, but I think that I more than anything hope for, I really do want there to be peace, above all, an immediate ceasefire, but I want there to be peace, and I do want not to have to go down in history and teach my students again in another 10 years that there was a genocide. We all watched it being live streamed and none of us did anything. So for anyone else who's raising their voice and making themselves heard, don't stop. Anyone else wants to give you more death threats, I don't know what you think you're going to change with just one measly human being being wiped off of this planet, but I won't stop
Fear.
talking about the right for a free Palestine. So thank you again for having me. It was an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Mitra. And I will see you in Rome at some point, and you can show me all the amazing ins and outs of Rome, and I'll show my audience. And unfortunately, I have to show them wristwatch stuff at the same time. But we'll talk wine. You're into wine as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can do the wine thing. There's common ground.
If you live in Italy and you don't like wine, then you're really fucked.
Right? I already live in Italy and I'm gluten intolerant, so imagine.
Hey, senza glutine. Let me tell you something. My niece, who accompanies me on almost all my holidays, whenever we're in Italy, and she's got celiac. Italy is one of the most accommodating countries in the entire world when it comes to gluten intolerance. We were in Fano, which is my in-laws' town in the La Marche. It's a beautiful little Roman town built in the year 9. You probably know the whole history of it, I'm imagining. It's a little walled city with a beautiful beach on the Adriatic. There was 2 gluten restaurants, senza glutine there. Amazing.
Super accommodating for that. So that's I get that question a lot. If people are afraid of it, and I said, no, Italy has got your back. Pastry shops, bakeries, pizzerias, 2 separate kitchens in these restaurants. They're super well prepared. Yeah. Well, gentlemen,
I stick to red wine, bistecca, and pesce, fish.
He doesn't do carbs.
I don't even I don't even order the pasta. Never mind senza glutine. But I get by fine. I'm living on a lagoon, so it's all fish. But listen, thank you so much, and excellent conversation. We'll continue it again at some other point. And yes, once again, anytime you want to come up to Venice, we can have a cicchetti, spritz select, and all of that. I can show you the Venetian way, the Serenissima. Otherwise, Roma, but I won't be able to eat the what's it called, cacio e pepe. I can't.
It's so
can't
good.
handle it.
It's okay. Let's go to the Jewish Quarter and have some fried artichoke.
Beautiful. I can bring you to the Jewish Quarter here, the original ghetto, the first Jewish ghetto in the world is in Canareggio here. So yes, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Have a great evening.
Be well.
Have a great evening. Guys, my next guest, I can't reveal his identity. We're going to call him John for this chat. He is born overseas, led a significant portion of his life in Eastern Europe and Israel. He identifies as an Israeli Jew. He is a veteran of the United States military and has worked for the US government since 2008. He's also a watch guy. That's how I know him. That's how we became friends. And not long after, we often exchange ideas about our silly hobby here with the watches, etc., as well as other various political and social ideologies. Welcome to the show, John. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I feel like you two just got done playing and I'm following with a banjo. So hopefully this conversation is something I can add to the mix here that's as insightful as what we all just heard.
Yeah, man. How do you feel hearing that kind of stuff? Like, as an American, like, I know you love your country and you identify as Jewish and Israeli. How is this? Like, what kind of feelings are you having during this whole thing?
So obviously this is a extremely complicated situation for everybody, and there's a lot of things that I think people that are looking at this as observers are maybe not parsing out. And there's layers to this. There's the basic human suffering on all sides. There's the territorial ambitions of both sides. There's the religious aspect that both sides have. And then there's the governments that are involved in this, and essentially everybody in between us as observers looking at this from the outside. So um, I think my background in multiculturalism and being exposed to different ideas over the years has helped not to solidify my position for one particular party view or the other, but has given me more of an open mind towards listening to other people, even when I disagree with them. And I think that kind of a lot of that is lost. And these types of long form discussions are very helpful because when people say they're open minded, a lot of times what they mean is they're open minded by allowing somebody else to have an opinion. But that's not really open mindedness. Just letting somebody else talk is not you being open minded. Open minded means that you are open to having your mind changed. And that's the difference between a conversation and a debate. And part of the problem that's happening now is this is all a public performative debate where people are having to pick sides and vehemently defend their side and vilify the other. And that leads us nowhere. There's no productivity in that. There's no real exchange of ideas because you're performing in front of an audience, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube. You're just, espousing your view and everybody else is wrong. And this is the way to do it, and vilifying the other side. So I think this is great. And again, really appreciate you doing this and taking on this topic. As I said earlier, hopefully we can chip away at some of your subscribers with this conversation, and
I'm losing them as we speak.
And get that plaque sent back to YouTube, because I don't think it really goes well with your room there. It's a little too modern.
I just dumped it behind me on the speaker or whatever.
I think I'm going to do.
I'll find a good spot for it later.
Yeah. So if Mikta hasn't alienated half of your audience, I'm going to try to do my best to alienate the other 50% here. But that's where I'm looking at it from. The identity portion of this is really what complicates everything, because there's so many competing interests and everything is so intertwined that it's not a clear-cut political problem. It's not a clear-cut geographic problem, and the religious aspects really complicate this entire debate and the entire conflict, because we can agree on land, we can agree on geography. Two opposing religions are pretty much never going to agree whether one is wrong, one is right. So the best we can hope for there is just coexistence and peaceful coexistence. So listening to all the sides, again, the fog of war here is really present. The lack of clarity about what's going on. Again, social media is not helping with any of that, because people are going into their respective information silos and just repeating the things that they say from Fox News or MSNBC. And it's not a productive way to have a civil discussion. So I think this is a much better format to do this than to exchange, witty retorts with each other over Instagram and fighting over the internet. So again, I appreciate you, letting me join this conversation, but that's kind of a roundabout answer there.
When I was growing up in Ireland, when I was a little kid, I didn't know anything about the conflict in the north, and the narrative I was given, just to be nice and simple, was there was a problem between the Catholics and the Protestants. That's what I was told. I don't know about you, Dirk. Were you given the same kind of story? It was the Catholics versus the Protestants, right?
100%.
Yeah. And I always thought it was a religious ideology that was the problem. And as I grew up, I realized it had nothing.
It was real estate.
It was real estate. It was the treatment of Catholics in the north, the treatment of Irish in general. You could identify them by the fact that they were Catholic, but that's like identifying someone from the trousers they wear. Like, it's nothing to do with it. But I was told it was that. And when I look at this problem here, yes, the religious shit doesn't make anything better at all. But as far as I'm concerned, before the Nakba, before World War II, and so on, and before Zionism in the first place, that Muslims, Jews, and Christians lived relatively peacefully in that region.
It was until they put the real estate sign on the lawn.
Yeah, well, they say the most destructive force in the world is a British map maker. And I think that Middle East is definitely.
Thank you for the first laugh of the evening, because it's been.
It's a heavy topic, yeah.
It's heavy,
and I think as Americans, we're also detached from the real impact of a global conflict, because we're shielded on both sides by two gigantic oceans. We have friendly neighbors north and south of us. Mm-hmm. So there hasn't been a successful invasion of the United States in a long time. And when we have our misadventures in the Middle East, we forget that when we leave, those people have to stay there. And I remember serving in the military during my first deployment. I had a platoon sergeant tell me, we had this rah moment about, being warriors and, the bravado of being in the military. And he kind of stopped us and he said, you guys are here for a short amount of time doing a job. The guys that are fighting in the mountains in flip-flops, those are warriors. They sleep in caves and they are fighting the most advanced military in the world, and they're holding their own. Those are warriors. And it really, that was a really deflating moment for the egos, but it was necessary because it put those things in perspective, because you want to realize, who you're fighting and the things that motivate them. And when I later transitioned into the intelligence side of government work, that really became something that I focused on, because you can't kill your way out of these problems. You can kill the people, but you can't kill an idea. So if we are truly passionate about changing the world to remake it more in our image of a Western cosmopolitan, pluralistic world, we have to win a battle of ideas with these people. We have to convince other people that our way of life is better. And that cannot be done through violence, because violence is the last resort when all else efforts fail. When conversation, culture, and diplomacy and economic measures fail, that's where you turn to war. And so by engaging in armed conflict, you've already capitulated all those other positions. So to me, the duality there of simultaneously bombing and killing people and then trying to get them to come over to your side of the fence to become Westernized and Americanized, it's completely contradictory to me. You're essentially creating this weird paradox where, if you don't join us, we'll kill you. Well, that doesn't give the person too many options, because subjugation or forceful subjugation, how they're looking at it, it's not effective. And we've had successes with this. World War II, think about the way the Japanese view us now. Think away the way the Germans view us, how we brought those countries into the fold after obliterating their societies. Mm-hmm. We started fixing it through economic incentives, through political, through diplomatic efforts. And again, this goes back to the former Soviet Union. I believe it was Reagan or Bush that said that one of his biggest regrets was not immediately coming to the aid of the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union collapsed, because he felt that was a missed opportunity, that we, instead of spiking the football in the end zone and celebrating, we should have immediately flooded Russia with material support, aid, economic opportunity.
And why didn't that happen? I was always amazed by that. We just let them just start their bread lines. The whole way of life that these people knew, no matter how bad everybody in the West said it was, now they had absolutely nothing. And they lived through a period of disgrace on the rest of the world, and we probably wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now with him had we done that. I mean, and I hate that America is the police of the world. It's annoying that America has to be the number one cop because we're always right and we're the goodies, and that's not necessarily true.
So I think the first point is, I think that there was a lot of dogmatic views of communism And I think that
Sure.
we were happy that, that was finally over.
The commies.
And
The
I don't know
pinkos.
that there,
Yeah.
and I don't know that there was an appetite for politicians of the American public to immediately embrace this rival and this long enemy.
Right.
And that gap between the fall of the Soviet Union and when we kind of started to try to work with them, I think it was too long of a gap. But
it was. They went through the junk Yeltsin period, and that just was like, that was like Boris,
Yeah.
I mean,
Again, this is where Putin became Putin, because again, in Putin's own words, he said that the greatest tragedy of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union. So that's the view that they have of the world. And instead of introducing a different view of ideas to try to combat the bad ideas of, the regime of the time, we kind of just sat back and let the chaos unfold to localize it to that area so that it didn't spread. But again, the second part, I think, again, I don't want anybody to misunderstand my position. When somebody asks me who I am, I say I'm an American. I mean, that is through and through as what I identify. My father once said, your nationality is a country that you will pick up a weapon for. And so that's how I view my national origin, although I have other, ethnic ties and, living different places. But there's a lot of imperfections in this country. And again, I know Oshin loves analogies, but I heard this one, I think it was brilliant. America is the cleanest dirty shirt that you have.
Yeah, that's probably true.
If you haven't done laundry and you have a bunch of shirts, you got to put the cleanest one on. That's America. Now, maybe that doesn't apply to everybody. Maybe people that have lived in other countries will say, I prefer Italy, I prefer France, I prefer other countries. But
the shirts are better.
The shirts are probably more tailored and higher quality, and they're not made in China. But
right, China.
In China. But I think that living where I've lived, I think definitely the U.S. has its advantages. It definitely has its disadvantages. But again, this is not a zero-sum game where either America wins and everybody else loses. There's a constant competition for power. And again, we are not. Go ahead.
How did you feel about Biden's thing today? I mean, I know Perel Biden is reading an Israeli teleprompter or whatever.
Yeah.
But
can he get his brand of baby food over there? Do you think they can get Gerbers over there in Israel?
Well, Air Force One is equipped with the latest technology when it comes to medical attention. So if anything happens, he will be safe. But
fine.
I think Biden is doing what every American president has done since the formation of Israel. I think that
they're towing the line.
There is, they view wrongly or correctly, they view Israel as an oasis of democracy and cosmopolitan views in a wasteland of morality.
It's a shame. Tehran was that. Iran was that too.
Yeah. And so whether people agree with that or not, that's how the policymakers of this country view this. And again, I want to make sure that everybody understands I'm not a policymaker. I'm not speaking here as a policymaker or even a political expert. Background is military intelligence and security operations within the United States and abroad. But I think that's how the policymakers view Israel. So for them, their concern, if we lose Israel, what does the rest of the region begin to look like?
So I feel like it's a very strategic point to have. Like you just mentioned earlier that, I mean, it's impossible to invade America. If anyone had that idea, it would take a terrible amount of firepower because you have you have a moat. It's like the old castle. You have a moat around. You have a body of water on either side. And as you said, friendlies, north and south. So what America strategically does is move into certain areas, liberate them or whatever they think they're doing, and leave behind a base. They always leave. They never leave fully. They leave behind a base so that they have these military spots. The invasion of Iraq and so on, they weren't launched out of the United States. They were launched out of Aviano here in Italy, in Vicenza, and so on. These are closer regions. So they've extended their tentacles kind of around the world. And I see, I read a lot of Chomsky. That might disappoint a lot of people in the audience, but it's brilliant. One of the great American scholars. And, he's talking about that. He's talking about why they would keep Israel in their pocket no matter what Israel does. Like Israel is like is like the fucking cousin or the younger brother who gets into a lot of shit, but they just keep letting him off and bailing him out of jail.
Because we created it.
Right.
That's why. Because the United Kingdom, America, and the United Nations, I mean, it was a project that we funded and we still do. And it's like failure is not an option.
But also, like that missile that hit that hospital last night, there's no doubt in my mind it was an Israeli strike. I mean, they said,
is there really no doubt?
There's
why
zero doubt. Because,
really?
Well, why is there doubt in your mind? That's the bigger question.
Would they
why
really
do you doubt it?
I mean, because as much as I'm not a fan of Netanyahu and the IDF and their practices, would they really be willing to kill people that are in hospital? I just think that doesn't sound. That doesn't sound.
That's well, they're way off calibrated. Then you've just watched people fucking ransack a store, but then they steal a Hermes bag, and you're just saying, "This is what I'm hearing." You're saying, "Oh, but they would never steal their Hermes bag." You need to be reminded about the things that were said. We will respond with an unprecedented level of attack. Well, the head of the military said, "We are fighting animals."
Isn't it very provable now when we find the actual weaponry?
Flatten them, finish them. They dropped 6,000 bombs, and then it comes to a bomb on a hospital, and you're like, "Oh, they wouldn't do that." Come on, Dirk. Come on, man.
So
listen,
I'm not that far over
bomb,
that
fucking bomb was mega. You can hear it.
What was it? Do we know what the actual?
We don't know what it was because the people have to go in. Like the representative to Israel at the UN today said, "We have evidence. We know for sure that it wasn't us that did that." There's no way you can know for sure until you investigate the crime.
What do you think, John?
So I agree that, again, and I think this is where emotions and preconceived notions sometimes cloud facts on the ground. Now, that being said, there is obviously an empirical truth one way or the other. But again, from my professional perspective, there's a terminology that we use when providing assessments or intelligence reporting to policymakers and people in higher positions. We never say we are 100% sure about anything, because when you're collecting information, when you're collecting intelligence, you are processing human intelligence, you're processing signals intelligence, intercepts, geospatial analysis, you are cross-referencing things.
I want all of that before, but in this particular instance, this whole thing that started, I want to see all the actual evidence, because it's just so crazy. Too many civilians have died. Too many children have died.
You're not going to get evidence on that particular. First of all, that whole area is going to get carpet bombed again and again in the following weeks. We're not going to get evidence.
Sure, it is, because they have the firepower.
So, and also this idea that it was a stray Hamas rocket out of 3,000 rockets. One of them happened to perfectly land at, come on. Like, do you think we were fucking born yesterday? Just swallow that nonsense story. Really, truly shows naive, man.
That's why I want a military person's perspective on it, because I think passions are hot.
Passions are hot. Sure. And I think the reason I say that is because, again, the terminology that we use when we report something like that, even if it's obvious, we will always say a high degree of certainty, a high degree of probability.
Right.
We will never say 100% this is what's happening, because at the end of the day, unless, even when you're on the ground, you can't read other people's thoughts and you can't see everything. So we always stay away from saying that this is exactly what's happening. We always say high degree of probability, high degree of certainty. One of the reasons we obviously do that is to insulate ourselves from being responsible for the subsequent policy decisions, because at the end of the day, the president, the Department of Defense has to consider all their options, and also the political and geopolitical and diplomatic implications of anything that they do. But 100% certainty is not really how intelligence gathering works. And I equate it to walking around in a unfamiliar building or a room with dim lights. You may be able to see a chair. You may be able to see furniture. You may bump into walls accidentally. You may trip over things, but there's never a point where all the lights come on and you can just see the entire room. And even if that's true, you can't see around corners and you can't see what's behind a piece of furniture. So the intelligence world is very murky. There's a lot of contradictory information. There's a lot of things that come in that seem after the fact to be, oh my God, how did you guys miss this? You know, how is it possible?
They took responsibility for it at first and then retracted it because it was so heinous.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, guys, but I mean, like to stop on this point about that is just for me utterly defeatist. I mean, it's just.
I mean, I think you expect that, so therefore you conclude that. That's what I think. I mean, it's so bad.
So 6,000 bombs were rained down in 6 days.
You're preaching to the choir here.
And one of them hit a hospital. So therefore, I'm jumping to conclusions.
I would like a little bit more.
I think if you get stuck on that point, man, like this,
I would like a little bit more
serious work to be done.
Like evidence.
And I'm absolutely, and I'm not
more evidence. So, do you need evidence, Dirk? Sorry. Do you need evidence for the other bombs that were leveling buildings? Do you need evidence for 6,000 bombs?
No, I don't need that.
Apparently, you need evidence for this one bomb. That's interesting.
Somebody's got to play devil's advocate here. Otherwise, it's a landslide.
Is that what you're doing? Is that what you're doing?
Yes, I'm totally doing that.
Fine. Do you believe in your heart of hearts that it was?
I do not
Hamas killing their own children in the hospital in order to make
I don't think Hamas is
worse.
Palestine. I think Hamas. I have a very low opinion of Hamas. I think they're.
Well, we all do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're a terrorist organization who will do what they can to.
But that's not what I'm asking you.
Well, I don't know. I wish I knew the answer. That's why I'm listening to John. And
yeah, I think it's absolutely possible that, again, this is where we could all be wrong, or we could all be right, or she could be right.
I don't have an opinion. I can't have an opinion. I'm not educated enough to have one.
And I don't have enough information to make a definitive claim one or the other. So that's all I'm saying. In this situation, if you're, emotional, and I'm not saying emotional to
we're all emotional over it because it affects the whole world.
But I think that just saying that's unequivocally true, that's where I say, okay, is it possible that Israel bombed a hospital and they intended for it to be a different target? Absolutely.
Definitely true. Definitely possible. Of course it is.
Is it possible that when they realized that it was a mistake, they walked it back? Absolutely, it's possible.
Can I add another possibility?
Sure.
Is it possible, given the fact that they already bombed another hospital previous to that, a couple of days earlier, that fortunately only had 4 or 5 people in it left? Is it possible that they bombed a school only hours after it? That they just bombed the shit out of that because those kids are animals. They're monobrows in their opinion. And they just went, fuck it, let's take these cunts out because they took us out last week. What they did last week is unforgivable. Therefore, we have carte blanche. That's the big possibility. You guys just talked about fringe possibilities. It's a much, much larger possibility. That's exactly what happened. That the plane, when there's doubt, the simplest answer is usually the clearest one, is usually the truth. Find the most basic, simple answer. That's the first one, everyone. That's the fact that we're all blocked on that, we're all stopped on that point, to me is pathetic. It's ridiculous because the carpet bombing is going to continue. It's gone on for the past. There's 12,000 injured. 12,000 in total.
Yeah, no.
Okay. You think one fucking little hospital with a bunch of little monobrow kids who they see as animals and future terrorists is going to make them lose any sleep at night? They fucking just pushed the button and went, let's move on. And then somebody in fucking PR went, you know what, we should deny this. And they went, okay, let's put our team of fucking media people together and let's deny it unequivocally. And all the guys out there without fucking half a brain will just fucking buy it. It's total bullshit. For anybody watching, do not fucking swallow that crap.
No,
this is the moment where they unequivocally said, we are going to fucking level the place. That's what they're doing. At least I'll give them that. I'll give the Israelis that. They're delivering on their promise. They're leveling
So-
the place.
so-
It's a pure fucking flattening of the place. They're
I do
cleaning it out.
agree.
2 years from now, it's going to be fucking luxury apartments. Come to Gaza and go to the beach. That's what they're planning. That's what they're doing, in my opinion. Sorry.
So I do agree that absolutely. Again, I don't think we're actually disagreeing about this. I think that
Now myself
I'm
and
just-
Dirk are.
Yeah,
That's
no,
okay.
I'm
We
just
disagree a
less.
lot.
I think I'm just less entrenched in the absolute nature of that theory. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think that given the way that I look at these types of situations, I'm hesitant myself to definitively backing one theory or the other. And again,
Sure.
I'm not working on Israel. I'm not at that desk. I'm not,
I'm not
dealing
at
with
that desk.
I'm
Wow.
not dealing with that information.
Way of putting
But
Shit.
I want to know all about the desk.
He goes
Yeah,
to the
so-
water cooler and there's guys that are at
there's a
that.
guy next to me. So I just hesitate to definitively say that those things are happening because again, that fog of war comes up. But the one thing I did want to kind of expand upon what your earlier guest said is I agree. I think there is I think the ruthlessness of Western governments is absolutely on par with the ruthlessness of the less developed countries. And what we've done as a progressive, westernized first world country is we've just managed to put this veneer of political correctness and correct language around these things. So, for example, when we do a military strike on a target, we don't say we're bombing the place. We say we're doing a kinetic strike. That's a very specific terminology to use. We don't say we use things like killer capture missions. They're not killer capture missions. They're kill missions, right? So there's this marketing apparatus that the U.S. government has developed over the years, and the brilliance of it started with the changing of the War Department to the Department of Defense. I mean, that simple turn of phrase
Right. The
is
War
the most
Department. Right,
brilliant
that's what it was
marketing
called.
move that the American government's ever done. They said, we're not going to call it the War Department. We're going to call it the Department of Defense. And so what's happened over the years is we've just refined and polished our approach to do the same barbaric shit that everybody else does. And the analogy I use is the watch collectors. I mean, what's the difference between a guy that collects Audemars Piguets and Pateks and Rolex versus the guy that collects Seikos? It's just a matter of taste and a matter of refinement and polishment.
One guy's got way more money.
One guy has way more money. He may have a more sophisticated palate. He may have more influential, powerful friends. But at the end of the day, they're both into watches. And those two timepieces do the same thing. They tell time. One is just much more polished, much more refined. And those same two collectors are very similar. They still have to have jobs. They have wives. They have kids. They have families. They have interests. They have ambitions. So the more we try to remove ourselves from that part of the world, at the end of the day, human beings in the Western world will resort to their primal needs the minute that the Western world stops looking like the Western world. And we've had examples of this. Look at what happened in Katrina. 5 days with no power and no water, and it was anarchy. So we are only a power outage away from turning into the quote unquote savages that we are trying to bring into the modern era.
Right.
And that is lost on a lot of people because we feel that we're so much more moral and we're so much more empathetic and we're so much more pluralistic and we want everybody to have a good life. But the minute that our safety, our national security, our economics are threatened, not even impacted necessarily, but threatened, that's when we retaliate and we go right back to those primal things. We just do it in a different way. I mean, think about the term collateral damage. What is collateral damage? It's murdering civilians.
It's a hospital.
What that is, right? But we've changed the terminology. We don't say we had an accidental killing of civilians. We say there was collateral damage, right? Collateral damage that dehumanizes the entire concept of what just happened. And that's a palatable way to process that information through the media. And
it's marketing.
Public. It's marketing. It's the best marketing. The best marketers in the world
Yeah.
are the United States government.
Yeah.
And Rolex and AP and any of these other brands would be I'm surprised that they haven't coordinated with these government agencies to say, hey, how do you guys do this?
Is it in-house or do they have like Young and Rubicam working for them?
It's all in-house. It's all in-house. Because again, the government recruits from various organizations. The government recruits from the private sector, academics. There are agencies that staff psychiatrists that work only on these types of projects, how to deliver bad news to the American population and make it palatable, digestible. I always say America is a country of bumper stickers, because bumper stickers convey short, palatable information. It's fast food for the mind. Because to do this, right, to have this conversation, to have this nuanced discussion, like I said earlier, nuance is the new N-word. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to say it.
God.
Yeah,
And
that's
and that's where we're at. So turning the temperature down and having this discussion, even if we disagree, that's what's been a lost art in our modern society.
It's completely the lost art. The lost art is counterpoint. The lost art is a difference of opinion and a negotiating table. When no one believes anybody anymore, there's no more truth. We live in an age where everything's videotaped and everything's recorded, yet no one believes anything that's real anymore.
My problem mainly is teams, is the tribalism of it. So when the 40 beheaded babies thing came out, which turned out to be total nonsense, and
Total
everybody
bullshit.
retracted. Unfortunately, they redacted their statement in little tweets and things like this. But unfortunately, by then the news was out. This time, 25 years from now, I'll still be hearing people saying, "But they beheaded 40 babies." Like it's going to stick. Okay, it's going to stick.
Biden stole the election.
Right?
They're still saying that.
Yeah, and fuck, even Biden said 40 beheaded babies. Right? It's fucking terrible, right?
Well, there's that great line.
Sorry.
There's a great line in the Ides of March
That's a great
with
one.
Ryan Gosling, and I think there's I forget the exact scene, but he makes the accusation about a rape or pedophilia or something, and the guy goes, "Well, why? That's not true. Why are you saying that?" And he goes, "I want to hear him deny it."
Yeah, I don't care if it's true. I just want to hear him deny it.
Right.
Because then he gets to regurgitate it again. But what I was trying to say there is once, a lot of people, when you have tribalism going on, a lot of people who hate Hamas, they hate Palestinians, they hate Arabs and so on, and they love it. I mean, they fucking love Israel. They get a boner whenever they hear that word, okay? They just went, 40 beheaded babies. They didn't need any proof, okay?
God.
And then when they hear that, Hamas hit this hospital, they're like, they just buy it immediately. And then the other side are going to say, they're going to believe the same stuff. The other side are going to say, oh my God, of course Israel struck the hospital, because it's turned into teams. It's turned into, I like my team. So my fucking team is the best. And you're just going to believe whatever rhetoric. Now, Israel don't have to work on this very hard. All they have to do is put out a thing saying, we didn't do it. And there's plenty of people go, you see, honey, you see what they said on the news? They didn't do it, honey, because that's what they said on the news, honey.
We're all victims of that in a way, because even your position is sort of, demonstrative of that.
Right.
That's immediately where you don't want to hear the other side of the argument necessarily, because you already said, hey, this is what happened. There's no way.
Right.
So we all have our biases, and I'm not saying that to call out any kind of inaccuracies in your statement, but it's just that being aware of that bias is what makes you more likely to seek out the truth. And
okay, but let's drag down the bias. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Arab. I don't even really feel any connection with those people at all. I don't like the music.
You're Irish, and it's relatable. It's very relatable.
It's a little bit relatable. It's a little bit relatable, but man, I've got so many Jewish friends. One of them is on the screen right now. Right? I've got how many Jewish friends do I have from New York? And some of them heavy, staunch Zionists.
Do you still have them?
So much. Yeah, I mean, we fucking argue. Like, they've been writing to me the past.
Are they still there?
Yeah, they've been writing to me going, "Hey, you fucker, what do you think is And we get along and fine. I've got 3 Palestinian friends, and I wouldn't even call them close friends. So if anything, I should be I'm coming in for the outside.
You'd
Man.
like
I
to
got no
have more,
fucking dog
though.
in the fight at all. Now, some might say, "Oh, he does have a dog in the fight. He's an anti-Semite," which, of course, is the classic card to use.
No, and I think that's the trope that people use because, again, the way that you
easy.
can be pro-Palestinian and anti-Hamas, you can be pro-Jew and anti-Israel, and you can
Right.
still criticize the American government. My biggest fear, and this is just to go back to the teams. I think America at this point looks at politics the way they look at football. There's a team sport, and my team's winning and your team's losing, and I don't care what the rules are. And if the ref calls a call on my team's side, I'm happy. When the ref calls the other team's call, I'm pissed.
Right.
And so there's those different dichotomies that exist, and I think there's basically three layers there. There's people that look at the world and politics when it comes to they're like sports fans.
Right.
One team wins, one team loses, but they're pure sports fan. They enjoy the game, and they're willing to concede when their team lost. Whether
This
it's
is
because there was
brilliant
a
what you're
call.
saying.
Yeah, so that's the first analogy. That's the first category. The second category is what
Put a pin in that 1 second. I'm not a big soccer fan, right? Not big. I'll watch the World Cup. That's interesting, but not huge in soccer. And years ago here in Italy, I met a lot of Italian soccer fans, but one of the guys was so passionate about it. He wouldn't go to the bar, wouldn't drink. He'd sit at home. His mom would make him coffee. It was a very serious thing. And his team lost. And I saw him the next day. I was like, "How are you doing, Pietro? Are you okay?" And he goes, "I'm fine." Because, they lost. And he goes, "The better team won." And I went, well, now I know he's truly a fan of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Because his team lost, but he was able to admit, he was man enough to admit that the better team won. They say if the Pope wakes up in the morning and says, "I believe in God," you think, well, nothing's new. That's your job. That's what you do. If, on the other hand, he wakes up and says, "I'm beginning to have my doubts," you wonder if he's onto something. Now, I know Iranians, people from Iran who are staunchly pro-Israel. Two guys. They're the most staunchly pro-Israel people I've ever met. They're from Iran, the fucking enemy. Okay, I know plenty of Jews who will speak out, Jewish Voice for Peace, if not now. Ilham Pape, I don't know them personally. I don't know Ilham Pape or Gideon Levy or these other people, Miko Pellet, but they're Israeli-born Jews who speak out against. Now we're onto something. Because when you say something that doesn't behoove you to say, that's against your own thing, you think, well, they might be onto something, because otherwise you just think they're rooting for their team.
Yeah.
It's a bit like you, John, that you're saying, you're able to describe American ideology, even though you're working for that same agency. Now we know that you're probably speaking truth, because otherwise it's just rhetoric.
Yeah, it's just repeating the talking points. And that's the second category. The second category is looking at it from the lawyer's point of view. An attorney's job is to represent their client, whether they're guilty or not.
Right.
They have to defend their client. Now, they are still bound by the rules of the court. So they will only go so far. They won't cross certain lines. And then the third category is the religious zealot. Those people, it doesn't matter what is said, who says it, what proof they have. They are fixated on one position or another, and there is nothing you're going to say to them, demonstrate to them, show them, prove to them that's going to cause them to leave that position. Yeah. And this is where I think people need to leave that third group of dogma and a zealot point of view about this conflict and slide into more of the attorney sports fan view of this world, where they can say, you know what, my team's kind of fucking up right now. We shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we should have a different approach. And you know what? The ref is right. That was a foul. That was unbecoming of an athlete. That was unsportsmanlike conduct. Yeah. And that's the problem, is we've just been siloed into these camps, and social media really doesn't help. The thing about the internet and social media, that one of the best things about it is that everyone has a voice. The worst thing about it is that everyone has a voice. And so that's this weird duality that we live in. But I will touch on something else about the racism in Israel. I remember coming there as a refugee from Eastern Europe, and there was a label for us. We were called Alim Chadashim. which is the new people. And there was a specific term for Israeli-born Jews. They're Sabras.
Oh,
So even with
Okay.
that, even that everybody's Jewish, and this is a Jewish homeland, and all the Jews are welcome from across the world, whether you're from Eastern Europe, Ethiopia, or any other part of the world, there was immediately a distinction made between you and us. We're Sabras, we're the originals, we were born in this country. You are the new people. So there is a
How
lot
long
of
did that
that.
last for you?
So we were there in the early '90s, and actually was there during the first Gulf War as a young kid, old enough to remember everything. But I definitely remember the view of Arabs and the view of Palestinians. We lived outside of Haifa for a long time, and I still have family in Tel Aviv. So this is definitely close to home for me as far as the humanitarian thing. But I think even in Israel, there's more nuance to the situation than there is in the U.S. Even in Israel, there's division between who supports the government, who doesn't support this approach, who believes that, Palestinians should have some sort of state. This is not working, right? This is an untenable situation. We have 70 years of data to show this. So what I'm more concerned about at this point is obviously World War III breaking out is definitely a concern. But the other concern I have is that Israel's going to repeat America's mistake after 9/11. And this is where, when you are a dog chasing a car and the car stops, you don't know what to do now. And this is what happened with 9/11. 9/11 was an opportunity. All the sympathies were on the side of the U.S. And
Yes.
we had an opportunity to have, at the same time, strategic, pardon the term, kinetic involvement in that part of the world, while simultaneously not emptying the bank account of empathy for our cause. And we redirected into Iraq. And I remember hearing the first time that Iraq was being spoken of. And I said, what the hell are we doing in Iraq? What does Iraq have to do with any of this? This is Al Qaeda. And so the idea that the government can't lie to you, I mean, Colin Powell went in front of the UN and lied about weapons of mass destruction. I mean, that was an
Hans Blix
absolute,
came back. Hans Blix came back, said, "There's no weapon. I can't see anything."
it was a verifiable lie.
Yeah.
And again, the attitude of the Americans was, yellow ribbons on your car, yellow ribbons on the tree, support the troops. And again, that cult, right? It's a cult mentality. And I've always been very averse to that, because I remember getting on a plane in uniform and sitting down in my seat. And before the plane took off, the flight attendant's making an announcement and everybody starts clapping. And I'm not even paying attention, and they're looking at me, and I'm going, what the hell is going on?
Thank you for your service. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your service. And my response to thank you for your service has always been thank you for paying taxes. Because it's just such an empty gesture of, hey, I support the troops. But how? By telling me that you support the troops? How about not sending us into bullshit wars in the Middle East on faulty intelligence? That's a great way to support the troops.
Yeah, I was speaking with a guy who I only know him through the watch world and whatever. But he's, he clearly served in the military. He's been injured also, and he, we were having the discussion. He's very religious, follows the word of the Bible and things like that. So it's difficult. It's a difficult conversation when you have to tread lightly and so on. And but he said, "Listen, man, I don't know what the hell is going on. All I know is I don't want to go back to war. I don't want to go back over there somewhere. I don't want to get deployed. I don't want to see my brothers get deployed." And I said it the other night when I saw Nikki Haley go, finish them. I was like, you just cost American lives, you cow. You just cost great people, because
she sure did.
I've got connections with America. My son's American. My best friend in the world is American. He's right here on the screen. My sister-in-law, my niece and nephew. And I know so many people who are in active service or were in active service. You get dragged into this stuff, man. This is not cool. But a lot of people are just, for what?
For what?
For this little area that has this idea that they were there 4,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. Therefore, they can expel the other people and crush them into non-existence,
Then
which
we've
is
got to
what's
give back
happening.
every body of land back to whoever they're, like the Inuits and the Native American. We'd have to give back every country in the world to whatever land borders we've drawn on a map.
It's an untenable situation, and I think the other
It's
part that
nonsense.
happens that American media is very good at this because before you're deploying or when you're thinking about joining the military, you're watching Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down, and you're like, oh, this is fucking cool. And then the minute you're in an alley in Ramadi and your best friend gets shot in the neck, it stops being cool really quick. And I think that's where, again, a lot of people that are, identify as very patriotic. And I see this a lot, even in my current job. I'll talk to people and they're
at the desk,
rah about America in the desk and in the field, and then just communicating with the general public. Because I'm one of those guys that if you met me, you would never know what I did for a living. I don't have bumper stickers. I don't post things on my social media about my military service. And to me, it's just a part of my life that happened.
You're a spook.
I'm not a gun nut. And I do have guns. I do have a certain feeling about that, but I don't subscribe to the cult culture of those things. And it's bled into regular society where you meet these people and they appear on the outside to be this hardened veteran. And I'll start talking to them. And it's like, hey, so where'd you serve? Oh, I was never in the military. Oh man, you got all the gear, you're looking like you're ready to invade Iraq. But it's just a lot of that political posturing because people feel like they have to project that patriotism. And
they look at the insurrection.
We
don't have another word for it.
They're waiting.
Those guys were packing.
They're waiting for the revolution.
Those guys had bumper stickers galore on all of their Ram trucks.
But now, can we talk about the unmentionable? I know this is difficult. World War III. I mean, it's an outside possibility that Iran go, oh, no, we're going to move in now. The second Iran move in, America are there, right?
Absolutely.
So absolutely, right? So and then who follows Iran?
Russia,
and China possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be fucked with these guys. These guys are maniacs. Mm-hmm. Who's going to be on America's side? Britain, France, and the fascist government of Italy, it seems.
The rest of the world.
The rest of the world.
So I think that's as catastrophic of a possibility as that is. I think in my mind that is a secondary bad scenario. I think the first bad scenario that's a lot more likely is that small proxy wars break out. And what happens now is Hezbollah looking at their brothers in Hamas being slaughtered.
Yes.
Are not going to lose face, because imagine that you are a Hezbollah commander sitting there watching this happen and you're sipping tea. What credibility do you have? So I think Hezbollah is going to become emboldened, empowered by this. And if they open up a second front with Israel, that's a much bigger problem, because if Hamas is a G-Shock, Hezbollah is an Omega or a Breitling. That is a totally different organization. They are far more organized. Their tactics are far better. Their weapon systems are much better. And they have a intelligence apparatus. They have a political apparatus that Hamas does not have. So Hamas is a ragtag kind of localized problem, whereas Hezbollah can become a regional or a global problem.
Right.
I don't know that necessarily. Again, I'm not speaking about anything that's classified, but I don't see in my mind's eye, again, I could be wrong, but I don't see that Iran wants a larger conflict with Israel or with the United States. So I think
me neither. And the reason why is it never broke out before. I mean, even with the Ayatollah running the whole show, it didn't happen in 2009, didn't happen in 2014. I can't see why they would intervene now. The numbers are a little higher now, but it's more of the same.
I think the biggest loss for Israel right now will be the discrediting of their position on the global stage. I think that's what the adversaries are looking at. I think that the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Iranians, that's why Jordan just canceled the meeting with Biden, because I think what they're doing is they're trying to make Israel the pariah of the Middle East. And
what about the Saudis? What about this? I can't resist the temptation to ask you.
I think
I mean,
the
this deal
Saudi,
between Saudi Arabia recognizing them and so on, which
I think what they're
clearly
trying
pits
to do.
Hamas off, right?
Well, Saudi and the Iranians have obviously been at odds for a long time, and they're regional competitors. And I think what Israel and the Saudis were trying to work out is just a normalization of relationships, because the Saudis are much more closely tied to the U.S. And I think that by not creating an enemy out of Israel, maybe not a friend or an ally, but maybe not having open hostilities, they are moving that much closer to a better seat at the table with the U.S. And they're demonstrating their ability to, work together and not be openly hostile towards America or its allies. And again, they're adding money to that bank account of legitimacy in the view of the world, whereas Iran is now kind of pushed into the other position where they're not cooperative with either the United States or Israel or the Saudis. So they're becoming more isolated. But I think this attack was definitely a godsend for anybody that is critical of Israel. And again, this is the other thing people forget about the tactics of terrorism. Terrorism is not just designed to inflict mass casualties and produce quote unquote terror in the population of the intended target. It is intended to then subsequently delegitimize the host nation because of the disproportionate response. And this is
Right.
what Israel is absolutely playing into that hand, because restraint in this position is the most difficult thing to do, but it is the best strategy, because you can now show, if Israel showed restraint in this situation, yeah, you can do surgical strikes, you can go and send your special forces in to go after the specific targets, but that shows a level of restraint while still responding with some measured force. But
Yeah.
what they're doing now is they're essentially proving the point of
Right.
all the other people that are watching this as of spectators, and they're saying, look, see, they are just as bad as we are. They are animals. They're killing our children, they're killing civilians, they're bombing hospitals. Look at what we've been dealing with for the last 70 years. So Israel has just completely depleted their bank account when it comes to their currency and standing in the world
It's
by
crazy. It's
retaliating
crazy.
the way that they did.
In a matter of a week, I mean, it took America quite some time. Everyone stood with America after 9/11. Everyone.
Absolutely.
There were moments of silence around the world. And within a year or two, they depleted that sympathy because they went and killed 1 million people in Iraq for apparently no real reason. Now people look back at that as, yes, a tragedy, but also like, oh, fuck them. They're worse anyway. I just, paraphrase. I just brought it down to one sentence.
Well, this was George Bush'd say,
The-
if you're not with us, you're with the terrorist.
Right.
I mean, that's just
Israel
a
have
stupid
done it
way.
within the space of
It's a
1
bumper
week.
sticker.
It's a bumper
Within the
sticker.
space of 1 week, they've actually undone it now. Now we have images of a hospital. We have images of fucking kids getting. I saw a little baby getting dragged because I'm privy to all this stuff. I get a lot of guys sending me all this raw video, without the blurring on it, and it's horrific shit. Like a baby getting pulled out of rubble, out of a woman's arms, she's dead. It's clearly the baby's mom. And the baby just they're pulling rubble out of the baby's mouth. I'm thinking, if that baby isn't a terrorist in 15 years or 20 years, it'll be a miracle. Within a week, the space of a week, they've undone. I said it on my thing on Who Needs a Drink on Friday. One of the boss moves for Israel would have been to be like, you know what? You came in, you fucking terrorized our people. You took people out of a music concert. Please bring our kids home and not do anything. The entire world, including any anti-Semites or Israelites out there, would have been like, oh, fuck, they are the people of peace. And those guys are the evil. Instead, revenge, carpet bomb. And it makes me think, you know what? Maybe there's another thing at play. Maybe it isn't about revenge. It's about, let's take care of that problem now that's been festering.
Well,
let's use this as an excuse to clean the place out, send them all down to Egypt, kill the rest who don't, and turn it into luxury apartments.
And this has been my argument against the false, people say there's no moral equivalence here. Hamas uses human shields to attack their targets, while Israel is actually deterred by that. And if you flip that on its head, think about how absurd that is. That imagine if Israel put their own women and children in front of their soldiers to shoot at Hamas militants. Well, Hamas has said they're trying to kill all the Israelis. They wouldn't be deterred by that. So
Yeah.
that level of restraint is definitely there. There's definitely a moral asymmetry to the conflict, because one side is explicitly attacking civilians and the other side, as imperfectly as they do, are trying not to target civilians. Now, a lot of that has
Do
changed.
you believe that? I don't believe that personally, but
I think that used to be the policy until this recent conflict. I think that there's been instances where the Israeli government would call everybody in a building in a Hamas stronghold.
yeah, the phone call. This is David.
Say, get out. We're about to drop a bomb.
This is how the phone call goes. This is David. They give them 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Somebody called me in my house here and said, you've got 10 minutes to leave. You know how hard it would be? Think about somebody with a big family and kids and everything. It's not really warning. It's not warning, but whatever.
And so
makes them feel better, makes them sleep at night. I don't know.
But I think here's my retort to that argument. My retort to that argument is, people will say intentions matter, right? Your intentions matter. I think they matter on a personal scale, but I don't know that they matter on a more on a larger national scale. So again, the example here would be if you and I are making dinner and I'm at your house and you accidentally cut me with a knife, right? Well, I need to know whether or not that was an accident or whether you intended to stab me, because now the entire chemistry of the interaction is changing. So in that sense, intentions absolutely matter. But if you are attending a wedding in Syria or Afghanistan and a bomb falls on the entire wedding party and kills everybody in sight, and you are the lone survivor and your entire family has just been wiped out, is it really going to matter when the defense attaché or the Defense Department head of the U.S. says, hey, we were targeting a Al-Qaeda militant. We didn't intend to kill all these people. We were trying to kill this guy. This was collateral damage. We're so sorry. That really doesn't make a difference to the impact on that person's life. So I think in that sense, good intentions only go so far, because the consequences are so much more catastrophic on a national scale. And I've heard this before. This was about the conflict in Yemen with, what's going on now. And somebody said that the Houthi. And somebody said, when elephants fight, it's the grass that is trampled. And that's kind of what's happening right now. That was a brilliant moment.
Dirk, this is like these little quips. Quips that are so.
I'm good with analogies, but that's one of my favorite lines. When elephants fight, the grass gets trampled, or the grass suffers the most. And that's really what's happening here. There's essentially a back and forth between, two governments, if you want to call Hamas a government, but.
That's all they got.
I still think that, and I still think Hamas is obviously a terrorist organization. I don't think that they have political goals.
No, they just want to wipe out all the Jews.
I think they have genocidal goals.
Yeah, they do.
But again,
they could have better. Palestine needs better representation.
But if I'm not defending. I'm explaining. There's a difference. We want to wipe out all the Nazis, right? We want to wipe out the Nazis. We don't like the Nazis, right? We don't like Nazis.
Except for the hot ones.
Do we just except for the fucking cute. No, I'm kidding.
The cute blondes.
Do we hate the Nazis because they have blue eyes and blonde hair? Do we hate the Nazis because they speak German? No, we hate the Nazis because of the things they do and say. Hamas, I'm not part of. I'm not a fan of these guys, but looking from their point of view, the Jews, in their opinion, are the Nazis. They make no distinction.
Yeah. No one is
Jewish people live safely across the planet Earth. It's one of the great ironies that Israel, the original Zionist idea was that it was a safe haven. It is now the
worst thing they ever did.
It's like the worst place you could live is
putting all the Jews in the line of fire.
In Germany, you can live safer as a Jew in Germany. Than you can there.
100%.
100%. Some guy puts his hand up in the air and says some fucking Nazi slogan.
Against the
he gets
law.
arrested. Yeah. And it's the same here in Italy. Like the Jewish quarter here, I haven't heard a peep out of anyone attacking the Jewish quarter. My friend Aldo, who sells me the cigars, Smoking Moses, everybody knows about him on the channel. Zero. They're safe. Jewish people in America are extremely safe. Jewish New Yorkers are extremely safe. Besides some fucking moron spraying some half-assed swastika on the side of a synagogue every now and then, everybody freaks out. There's no real problem. They live safely across the world. The least safe place is that hellhole right there. Why? Because of that issue, that pressing issue. I don't know. It's like it's a moving contradiction, living contradiction.
And I agree. And this is, again, where you have to take the opposing view to understand what you're dealing with, because no one is the villain in their own movie. Everybody's the good guy in their own film. And that's right. What they're playing this out in their own view. No one is a terrorist. Everybody's a freedom fighter. You know, when the United States was founded, the oppressor was the British. You know, and the terrible things we did. Again, you mentioned being tarred and feathered. That was something that the American colonists did to British tax collectors. You know, so that, I mean, think about the inhumane treatment there.
Some sick shit back in the day.
And America developed the first guerrilla warfare tactics, because the British were marching in line and they're like, what are we doing? We can just hide in the woods, pick these guys off, run away. And at the time, that was such a taboo of modern warfare that the British didn't know how to deal with it. So as far as guerrilla warfare and terrorism, I mean,
the Irish invented the car bomb.
Yeah, the Ranger Battalion was founded based on Rogers Rangers. They were marauders, basically. They would go out and they would scalp British POWs and KIA. I mean, this is so none of this is new. I just think that over the years, the Americans and other Western powers have found a way to just refine it and put a nice polish on it. But the actions are still the same, and they're obviously being interpreted that way by the receiving end. You know, again, when you drop a high-powered munition on a building in Pakistan, doesn't matter if you're saying, yeah, you know what, we're so sorry, we didn't mean to kill you and your entire family, we meant to kill this militant. You just created a new militant. Because what's that guy gonna do?
All that does. So, and the Germans kill the Jews, and the Jews kill the Arabs, and the Arabs kill that. It's the greatest line ever in a song.
That is the news, Roger Waters.
That is the news.
Yeah. Well, this is where Oshin had a brilliant line. And again, I even mentioned this to my wife, and she said, oh my God, that is brilliant and heartbreaking. And I don't know if you even meant it at the time to have the gravity of what you said, but when you said that the Palestinians are the last victims of the Holocaust. And man, I mean, I heard that, and you kind of just moved on, and I was like, Jesus Christ, that was one of the most profound things I've ever heard. And it really resonated with me, because that really is true. If you think about the lineage of this entire conflict, this is where we're at.
Well, where do you see it going, John? Like, what do you see is realistically going on?
My optimistic view,
5 years
or
from now?
My realistic view?
Your realistic view. That's what you're here for.
Yeah. I think my realistic view is that Israel may not do a ground offensive. I think they may hold back. I think they are having those conversations in the background with the American leadership about what are you going to do if you remove Hamas from leadership? What happens then? It's the same reason we haven't deposed Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il. What are you going to do with the people now that you're in charge? And this is what happened to us in Iraq. We debaptized the government, we sent everybody home, and we had an insurgency. So I think that's the big concern right now is, what do you do if you win? What do you do if you actually get rid of Hamas leadership? What takes its place? Is there a more
Hamas 2.0?
Hamas 2.0, what does that look like? So I think there's restraint on that part. And I think realistically, what I think is going to happen is, I think that pressure from the United States to pull back. You know, right now, Benjamin Netanyahu is a kid who has the keys to the Corvette, and dad's asleep on the couch. And I think dad just woke up and said, where the hell's my car? And I think that restraint will kick in. I think that globally, there's a lot of pressure on Israel not to level Gaza and create a humanitarian crisis. They opened up a corridor now with Egypt. They're trying to have conversations about how to get assistance into the region. And I think they're going to pull back. I think right now they're hesitant to have a ground offensive because they don't know what they're going to do if they actually engulf the country and win. So what I see happening realistically over the next several months, maybe a year, is that everything kind of scales back. there will be a much more militant posture on the border between Gaza and Israel. I think they may bring back a little bit of more of a defensive role, because they did get caught with their pants down, so to speak. And I think
Jesus,
that
it was heavy as it was, man.
yeah,
Fuck me.
but again,
How
this is
did
part of
that happen?
So
Israel can predict just about any kind of movement, and they have some of the best
This is what
intelligence
Mitre
in the
was
world.
saying.
my
I don't
understanding,
understand.
yeah, my understanding is that, again, and this is not something that I have, a tie into officially, but my understanding is that what happened was that Bibi Netanyahu was listening
Thank you,
to a
bro.
lot of the right-wing zealots in his party, and those groups were more concerned with the West Bank. And
Okay.
so they were pushing all the military presence, and all the attention was shifted to the West Bank. And the Gaza area has been kind of just like a nuisance. It was kind of a thorn in their side, but they never expected something like this to happen. And they pulled a lot of assets from that area to monitor the West Bank, and a lot of troops were moved to that area. And again, this is where I agree with Oshin. The initial response from Netanyahu was, we were not warned. Egypt did not warn us. We had no idea. And then they walked it back and said, actually, Egypt did provide us with intelligence that there was something major coming. The same way that the Russian FSB gave the American FBI a warning about the Boston Marathon bombers. They said, hey, these guys came back from Tajikistan, Dagestan. They were training. These guys are militant. They're determined. You need to keep an eye on them. They opened up a Guardian case on these guys. They went out and interviewed them and said, they're just kids. And then 6 months later, boom. So I think that intelligence failure is definitely something that happens. Again, this is where no matter how robust your surveillance or intelligence apparatus is, there are flaws, and there's too many moving parts and too many pieces in the system. Again, bringing it back to the watch world, right? A Patek has a lot more intricacies in it than a G-Shock. And that thing will break or have malfunctions. You can't take it into water. A G-Shock, much simpler. It can function in just about any environment. So I think the more sophisticated, the more complicated the intelligence apparatus gets, the more disconnects there are. And again, bringing it back to 9/11, if you ever listen to some of those tapes from the FAA, there was a lot of confusion in those first moments about whether or not it was even a real hijacking. And there's audio back and forth between the military and the pilots. And they keep saying, is this real world? Is this real world, or is this a training exercise? And it took forever just to scramble jets from Selfridge Air Force Base in Michigan, just for the people to realize, holy shit, this is actually happening. So all those things, as good as the security system is, part of that false sense of security is that everybody thinks that everybody else is doing their part. I'm over here doing my thing. The other guys are watching their place. And when everybody assumes that about the other agent or the other soldier or the other agency, that's where things get missed, and the intelligence sharing and all that stuff. It's very complicated. So I think those intelligence failures are much more likely in a more convoluted intelligence apparatus, which is what Israel and the United States have, because we have so much technology and surveillance and such a large footprint that processing all that intelligence takes forever, and it takes a long time, and things get missed, and things that should be highlighted aren't highlighted. So I think what's eventually going to happen is there will be kind of a stalemate, maybe some kind of pullback, a status quo will kind of be regained, and everybody will be very tense for a long time. That's what I envision. I personally don't think that there is going to be World War III, because I think that in this situation, everybody loses. And I think that Iran and Saudi Arabia and the U.S., I don't think there's an appetite in the U.S. to get into another ground conflict in the Middle East, certainly not over this. And I don't think that Israel is necessarily, besides being a geopolitical strategic ally, I don't think there's a lot of interest in just putting thousands of troops on the ground there. Now, again, people will push back and say, hey, we're sending 2,000 support troops there now. What the hell are you talking about? But that's not anything new. I mean, we can have a presence somewhere on an aircraft carrier and provide logistical support, intelligence.
Yeah, there are two entering the Mediterranean
without being into a ground conflict. I don't see a scenario where the 101st Airborne and Special Forces and Ranger battalions are running around Gaza and helping the IDF. I don't see that happening. And I also don't see that Iran gets directly involved. I think for Iran, the best thing to do right now is to,
Shut up.
at best, keep quiet, activate Hezbollah, allow them to do the dirty work, and then basically watch Israel's reputation deteriorate because of their response.
It's
And
certainly
just watch.
deteriorated because you see the protests the world over. I mean, it's crazy. I was shocked to see Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, protests out there with Palestinian flags, but not 18 dudes surrounded by cops, like thousands, tens of thousands out in Los Angeles, Chicago.
Yeah.
And then over here, of course, all the major cities. It's amazing because you see the voices of the leaders, but the people themselves is a very different voice. Like Ireland, for example, aren't coming in hard from a political point of view. We're not doing it, and we've been famously pro-Palestine plight for so long. Of course, the people came to the streets. There were tens of thousands on the streets, but Ireland still haven't expelled the Israeli ambassador there. We still haven't recognized Palestine as a nation of its own. Something that other countries have already done. It's surprising that Ireland hasn't done it. So it's like the voice of the politicians, the voice of the people are two very, very different things when it comes to this issue. And if this all just like calms down over the next few weeks, and let's hope so.
Yeah.
I feel like the next time it boils up, which is it's bound to happen in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there's going to be even more support on the streets. That's the way I see it going.
I see, and I want to pose a question to you guys because I thought about this earlier. This is very reminiscent to me of the Black Lives Matter protests that erupted in the U.S., that you had an incident and then two sides were immediately created. You were either Blue Lives Matter and you're pro law enforcement, or you were BLM. And,
people missed the point on that. That was the big problem.
People failed to thread that needle.
I mean, that's the reason why I'm barely on Facebook anymore, because it started with Black Lives Matter. People who I thought had some modicum of intelligence were writing all lives matter. I'm like, you're missing the whole point here.
So this is what I see with this, people
all lives matter, of course, but not all of them need the defense, right?
Yeah, and this is where people were either so pro police that cops never do anything wrong and cops are the best people on the planet, or Black people are being indiscriminately slaughtered in the streets and there's a genocide. And both sides were just amplifying those messages. And I kind of see that now, where either you're pro-Israel and everybody in Palestine is either a current terrorist or a future terrorist, or free Palestine, the Jews deserve it, they're Zionists, they're imperialists, they're conquerors, they need to be, so those voices, those megaphones that everybody has now, I think is really skewing the conversation.
Sure.
Again, that's why I really appreciate something like this, because again, I'm an outlier in my profession. A lot of people that I work with, they look at me and kind of raise their eyebrows like, man, you're Jewish. How do you feel about this?
Right. And you're very intelligent. Even Gene Simmons, somebody posed a question about something about he's Roger Waters, he's anti-Zionist, so he hates Jews, and Gene goes, well, those aren't the same thing.
Yeah,
which is amazing for Gene Simmons,
which is amazing. Born in Haifa, he's Israeli,
staunchly anti-United
his mother,
Nations guy and stuff.
When somebody asks me this question about how I feel about it, before my answer was how much time do you have, and from this point forward, my answer is going to be, how much time do you have, and do you have a YouTube channel? Because that's where we can have this conversation. Because and again, I take it back to what I said earlier. You have to come into a conversation willing to have your mind changed. And if you're not there,
what's the point?
That's a debate. That's an argument. Because to have your mind changed in a debate is to lose the debate. To have your mind changed in a conversation is to learn a new perspective and empathize with the other person and find common ground.
Information is power, man. Perspective is everything. And you know what? We live in our little cocoons. He lives in the most beautiful city in the world. I live in the biggest city in the world. don't know where you are, but
No, we can't.
I'm in
you're
America.
you're at the desk.
I'm in
you know?
America.
Yeah. So I mean, I can never speak for a Palestinian or an Israeli or a black person, like Black Lives Matter, and like I'm as white as fuck, you know. Who am I to open up my big mouth? Do I have an opinion of it? Sure, we all do. We all have opinions, but eventually,
Well,
something like Israel and Palestine affects the world at large.
it
But
does.
also, there's an advantage to that, Dirk. Like being outside, I made the
But
point
it's
the
not.
other night
People
as
don't
well.
like it. It's not welcome, though. That's the problem. It's not welcome. We don't know what you're
Well,
talking
think.
about.
But I brought it up the other night with South Africa, the Afrikaans,
Yeah.
versus the indigenous people. I follow a lot of great Israeli scholars and writers, journalists, and so on, Jewish living in Israel, who were against the occupation.
Sure.
And
Rabbi Dovi, he's amazing.
Yeah, Gideon Levy and so on. And one of the great points is, it's irrelevant what the occupier thinks. Like, what do Israelis think about the occupation? It doesn't matter.
Well, they don't think it's an occupation.
They don't think it is.
No.
And it's like going back to the Afrikaans in South Africa. It's like asking them, what do you think should happen? It doesn't. They're the occupier. They're the oppressor. Don't ask the. It's like going back to 1935 and saying to a Nazi, like, what do you think we should do with Europe? It doesn't, like, it's out of the conversation. The outside voice actually has it should have a strong voice. A lot of people are like, have you ever been over there? Have you ever seen it up front? And yes, you're at a certain disadvantage if you haven't been there. And both John, my guest now, and Mitra, the previous guest, have both been there for plenty of time. John more, I think. And that's a certain advantage. But also being outside it, looking in, you have a certain objectivity. You're able to see things kind of clearly because you don't have a dog in the fight. You don't have parents or grandparents who told you all this stuff since you were a kid and so on. So there is a certain thing to be said about objectivity. I'm just throwing that in. I'm not saying I'm inherently right because I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just saying the person with no dog in the fight might have a certain superpower that the rest of them don't have.
There's a lot of truth to that. And I think I agree with you 100%, but for the reason that, again, to take it back to another great line that my first platoon sergeant told me when I politely questioned his decision about something. I don't remember what the context was, but he said, you see your lane, I see the entire pool. Right. And I think that applies to this. I think the people that are involved in this emotionally, spiritually, they have family there. They are fixated. They have blinders on when they're looking at the situation. Somebody who's looking at it from an outside perspective, detached from the emotions and looking at it from a moral perspective and from a global perspective, I think you have a lot more insight. And I think, again, voices like yours are far more important in this conversation because otherwise it just becomes a shouting match. So in this perspective, you're almost as a moderator to kind of keep the temperature down and allow to both sides. And again, this is demonstrating this point. It's sad that I made the mistake of looking at some of the comments, and it says, when is Oshin going to denounce Hamas? As if that is some kind of prerequisite requirement to have a civil conversation about this. That's not on the table. We can all agree that Hamas is not in line with our values, but you still have to do an analytical kind of deep dive on what's driving and what's motivating people, because again, you cannot kill your way out of this problem. And America's tried. We've tried killing a way out of this.
Way out.
It doesn't work. The joke is if violence isn't working, you're not using enough. But that's really doesn't apply here because ideas propagate, and the more entrenched you are in the conflict, the less likely the resolution will be diplomatic or humanitarian or political. And that's where we have to be. Again, the asymmetry here needs to be applied in both directions. If we are saying that Israel has an asymmetric military advantage, and they are the more moral country, one of the ways they can demonstrate that is through restraint.
Yes.
right? That's a great way to demonstrate your moral superiority and your value system and your ethics by saying, you know what? We're not going to level you. Because again, Israel could kill every Palestinian tomorrow if they wanted to,
Easily.
but
Tonight.
they're not doing that. And now with this response, they're actually treading towards that precipice. And that's what is dangerous to me, is that in war, people lose their morality. And right now, Israel's caught up in that fervor, that anger, which is understandable.
But
But
that's what makes
somebody,
me think there might be something bigger. I mean, think about it. They want the expanded. I mean, Bibi and Ben Gavir, especially Ben Gavir.
yeah,
Don't get me started on that guy. They want the expanded Israel. They want the larger Israel. Okay, the greater Israel. They want to clean out that whole land. Gaza is a sore. It's like a scab on their leg. They want to pull it off, and
yeah,
that's what makes me think that they may be galvanizing the ire of the people after what happened last week to go ahead to proceed with their military operation to clean out that area. Gaza is 360 square miles, whatever, 15 miles long and 3 miles wide or whatever it is. They're going to reduce it. This is what I see. They're going to reduce that now to a much smaller part. The north, they're going to clear out. Eventually, Egypt will buckle and say, okay, we'll take them in. Where the hell else are they going to go? And then the problem is solved. It's gone. And then they can proceed with their dream, their Jewish dream. This is really scary shit. They have this Jewish dream that's all, it's religious. This idea of this pure Israel where it's just all Jews happily, and they get rid of that eyesore. That's what I think that's happening. I think they're
and I think part
much
of that
more
is
clever
driven. I think part of that is driven definitely by religion, but I think the other part of it is driven by, the idea that some cultures are more in line with Western values, and I think that there's definitely a problem in.
That's why the fascists, by the way, I have to interject. The fascists that I know here in Italy, and I know a great many, and some who would even say they're more than like proper neo-fascists. That's why they like Israel. Even though you think, well, you're a fascist, you should like Hitler and so on. Yeah, they do, but they also like Israel because they're white and they're modern society, and they want that cleaned out. So they side with Israel for that reason. They may not like Jews. Honestly, they don't really talk about that at all. The guys that I know, I haven't spoken to these guys now in a long time, but I see their posts on Facebook because some of them are still my mates on Facebook. And they may not like that, but they like the whites, the modern industrialized whites taking over and clearing out all the little brown kids. And to put it in a very simple.
But I think a lot of it goes back to the idea of some cultures value different things. And I think that there's agreement about certain religions and certain cultures, the way that they view our world in the Western world and the way they view cosmopolitan societies and pluralistic democratic societies. And if you look at the Muslim world, there's a lot of places where there are some troubling views when it comes to the treatment of Jews, the treatments of gays and lesbians, their attitudes towards women's equality. And again, there is definitely a kernel of true concern there that is wrapped up in a lot of nationalism and basically racism. But there is a concern there that if you have these, 7th century theocracies that are competing with modern value systems, what's going to happen? And, the thing that I said, we were talking and people were like, well, this is a clash of civilizations. I said, this is a clash with civilization. That's a root. That is a root of this conflict. Now, that doesn't justify the behavior and the totally asymmetrical military response, because again, I take it back to, you have to win the war of ideas, and you can't do that through the barrel of a rifle or a missile. That doesn't work. So we have to find a way to empower moderates in the Muslim world. We have to find a way to limit the influence of religious fundamentalists on both sides, because Israel, again, growing up there, I can tell you the most aggressive people I've ever met in my life were Hasidic Jews.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Brilliant. It is bizarre. Their behavior is bizarre. If you walk
Ben Gavir.
But I mean, to the point where if you walk through Jerusalem, through certain neighborhoods, I remember my sister was told on the Sabbath, you stay out of these neighborhoods. Because if you were a woman walking alone, scantily dressed, or driving your car, you would be assaulted by a group of Hasidic men. And this was not something that the government would intervene with. They wouldn't send police officers down there.
They're horny.
Yeah, this was a precautionary
frustrated.
tale. Yeah,
They're frustrated.
This was a precautionary tale. Say, hey, stay out of this neighborhood because if you're walking there alone, you're going to get assaulted. You're going to get rocks thrown at you, and you're going to get chased out.
They don't have a good reputation in New York either.
No. So this is also there's religious fundamentalism on both sides. Yeah. Well, and again, we've
don't come at me with that, people.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen, John. Incredible. Thank you. Incredible insight. Thank you so much. And the bravery of coming on. I know this is very risky for you in your line of work. It's been wonderful having you on and have your perspective. Myself and Dirk are going to finish off with final thoughts. Just the two of us, just two friends chatting iBashers stuff. Again, anybody watching, this is iBashers. This is where we bash things out. Normally it's funny stuff. We're talking about Taylor Swift or just some silly stuff that happened in the news. And sometimes it gets more serious. And this week it's a bit more serious. I hope you forgive us for that.
Thank you both again for
thanks for coming on
and thank you for having this conversation. Yeah, this was great. And next time maybe we'll talk about how to get a Rolex from your AD using your government spy skills.
Are you still not to take a total left turn? Are you still wearing that GMT Rolex, the Pepsi that's in the
Pepsi? Yeah, that is still on my wrist daily. A lot more scratches on it, and
beautiful.
I actually use the GMT function because I travel quite a bit. So I'm in my 40s, so I'm still old enough to when somebody asks me what the date is, I look at my wrist, not my phone. So it is a tool watch. As much as people will say that Rolex are no longer tool watches,
that's a tool watch.
Yeah. This is somebody said one time that's a watch of a PhD that can still win a bar fight.
That's a Pan Am pilot watch. What that is.
That's what it is.
So I love it. Thank you guys again. Sorry
thank
for
you
the
very
late,
much.
I know we talked quite a bit, but appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk. And hopefully we chipped away at that subscriber number with you, Oshin.
Yeah. I'm sure
you'll get them back.
No, I'll get them back because of you. I think I'll get them back. Yeah, I'll get a few back because of you. Thank you, man.
I appreciate it, guys. Take care. Have a good night.
Have a good night, John. Thank you.
Take it easy, man.
Wow.
How's it going, Dirk? You all right?
Yeah. I enjoyed part 2 a whole lot more than I enjoyed part 1.
Why did you not like part 1?
I just felt like I got steamrolled that whole hour. You know, it was just not a word in edgewise. It was just I'm not a big fan of the one-sided argument, man. I'm not a fan.
Okay.
There was no
She had a lot to
leeway.
say. She had a lot to say, and she's been dragged through it the past 10 days.
Yeah.
No,
I'm sure she has. It's just that I just felt like I was just getting pummeled. You know, it just
you were getting pummeled.
I think it was just way too much heavy-handed, nonstop stuff going on. I was trying to get some perspective, some nuance, and it wasn't allowed. That
might have been me because
that's why I just shut up.
Coming back with the questions and so on.
I just kept my mouth shut because I was like, all right, I'm not getting anywhere here. John, on the other hand, no disrespect, but John, on the other hand, what a even-handed, nuanced perspective. Yes, perhaps he's not currently under siege. I know what that feels like. You know what that feels like. But other than that, I mean, you know, I don't think anybody's going to come looking to murder us anytime soon.
Because we kind of stayed in the center while me.
Well, you know, I mean, I'm always pretty much in the center. You not so much, but I'm as moderate as you can get, pretty much. When it comes to certain things, and you know, there's no alcohol in my system at all. That can change things. But I thought, I mean,
is that pointed at me or something?
No.
Alcohol
It's pointed at me.
Oh, because you can change your. Okay.
Oh my God! Like I've said, one drink, I'm grand. 2, I'm the life of the party. 3, asshole. You know?
Sure. What does
You
that
know?
got to do with this conversation? I don't. Sorry, I missed you.
That's
there.
why I didn't drink anything. That's why
Yeah.
I purposely didn't have a beer or a glass of wine.
Had you
because
had what would
I think I would have got a little bit more adversarial with our first guest because I just felt like she wasn't giving us any room to work with.
well she I don't know if that wasn't the reason she was here. I
I
invited.
mean, it's a chat show.
I know, but yeah, but she she has a lot to say, and
Yeah, but
that's her
I was trying to
position.
get some perspective on the story and get in there, and it just
You didn't like it?
after a while I just get exhausted. I was exhausted. I was
Wow.
exhausted. Not that I don't feel for her, I do, but I just wanted to understand how
You didn't
an
like all the
Iranian.
history stuff? I liked all the history
I
stuff.
loved all of that stuff. Was great, but then she's also like she's kind of she also was more interested in like knocking down all the statues and all that shit. I hate all that crap. Not a big fan
Right.
of that mindset at all. I'm not a fan of reparations to anybody. We're not those people, and why should I pay you for something people did 500 years ago? We were all
Right.
assholes 100 years ago, 200 years ago.
Yeah.
We were barbaric assholes, all of us.
Yeah.
All of it. The only one was Jesus, and who knows? He slept with hookers. He probably had syphilis. Who knows? Who fucking knows? Like most historical people, kings, queens, noblemen, scientists, they were all crazy. I mean, Da Vinci used to steal bodies from morgues.
So he could figure out the muscle tone.
Yeah, so you could map it out,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it just got so heavy. I mean, maybe we haven't done this format before, so maybe I just need to maybe I needed a drink for it. I just finally felt a lot of the comments were like, "Wow."
In the comments I left alone for the
I
moment
read them
very
all. We had a
polarizing.
lot of very unfriendly people, which is fine.
Sure. That's
Dan,
fine.
you're a dick.
Who's Dan? I don't know what
That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay. If you want to go through some of the
No, I
comments,
don't want to.
we can address them.
No, you know what? I'm going to the East Village tonight to see Steve, my band mascot. He's playing with his band, the Serial Poets. So I'm going to go see them,
Nice.
and have a couple of glasses of wine.
Nice.
No, I just noticed in the comments that like John brought it up. When you're brought up a certain way, when you're indoctrinated in a certain way, I was like, listen, if I got a call from the cops and they said you were, in jail for murder, I'd still come down and bail you out. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I know you'd do the same thing for me because you'd be like, oh, fuck. I would say he didn't do it, right? And you'd be like, he didn't do it, right? But if you told me you did, I'd still bail you out because, that's just how it is. That's the way they are. That's the way we are for our people, for it all. And I get all of that. I don't like being lectured. I don't enjoy it at all. I enjoy being educated.
I don't feel like I was lectured.
Oh, I do.
I heard a strong opinion of an intelligent, very informed,
but it was
woman.
extremely monotone. It was one person's perspective, just like right down the line. And I didn't really understand the connection. And I'm not trying to give her grief now. It's just that it came on very heavy, Yes, Dirk does need to drink now. Anyway, I mean, I don't really know. Is it just because that she just talks a lot on the internet because she's not Jewish and she's not Palestinian?
No, she's a historian.
Right.
And she just went through 10 days of extreme, brutal threats to her life and to her family.
Because she had expressed her opinions.
Because she said free Palestine. And these guys they came for Michaela. They came for Michaela because she's on the show with us talking about fashion, talking about shirts and ties. They came for Michaela. I'm happy that we had her on the show.
Oh, I am too.
Need to know
what can happen to somebody. Yeah. And no disrespect.
The one thing we didn't have is the polar opposite of her.
We didn't have
perhaps I could have had a third guy on or girl saying level that place, Israel is the greatest, blah blah blah, and just go hell for leather on that. And then all these guys in the chat who were attacking me or whatever would be like, yeah, baby, perhaps that would be the proper setup. That's my fault. Maybe I should have had that extra person in.
It really
to show
wasn't
that
so much
side.
you. If you'll go through these all later. It was just people who have a story and are going to stick to it. That's it. There's no convincing. I want to be convinced about everything, like the hospital. I want to be convinced. I don't want to come up with my own, because it's too heinous. Like, I did not want to believe anything about that music festival. I did not want to believe a word of it. And then I watched like 5 different accounts, maps, and I was like, wow, they really did that. Wow. I just don't want to believe that. The hospital, I'd like to see some more stuff. That's it. I just don't want to say, because who do you believe now? It's just barbarians have gone wild. It's just gone. It's so insanely heinous over there now. It's so bad. And then there was people in the chat saying nobody's talking about the Ukraine anymore.
No, we're just talking about this
we have
now.
fatigue.
We spoke about Ukraine. Remember when it was all happening? We did. We had the conversation. Now people have been hitting me with that.
People
too.
have.
Hey, you're talking about this, but you didn't talk about.
Yeah,
but I'm like, yes, I did.
You're not talking about blah blah blah. You know what? People. The truth of the matter is that as far as Israel goes, most people who are not invested in that situation have Israel fatigue, because it's been going on too fucking long.
75 years.
Everybody's sick of it. And you know what? That's the problem with Ukraine and anything else. Why is it not in the news anymore? Because people get tired of it. They get tired of it. Yeah, they get fatigued, and it's human nature. We were talking to John earlier, and I was like, well, you know what? I'm a vegetarian, but if we were both in a plane crash on the mountain and you died, I probably would eat you.
Right.
I mean, because I would regress to that inner monster savage that we all are. Society has made us not be that way. But have a plane crash on a mountain and see what's going to happen. I don't know. This other Dan, not the Dan that I thought was a dick. I thought he said Rolex fatigue.
Rolex fatigue. We've all got Rolex fatigue.
Your brother doesn't have Rolex fatigue, that's for sure.
Oh, he's loving that stuff.
Yeah, it's good. But other than that, I thought it was a good show, and I like I said, I don't think we're on anybody's jihad or hit list, and that's a good thing.
You don't think I'm going to get assassinated tomorrow on the streets of Venice?
No, I don't think so.
It was crazy because I went out today to the shopping center, to the supermarket, and there were carbonari everywhere.
Oh boy!
And it was a very strange feeling in Venice today. And there was carbonari racing up the canal, because they can. Like, no one's allowed except for them and the fire department. No one else can go over 5 miles an hour on the canal. It's restricted. And I was like, there was a bunch of carbonari stepped onto the Vaporetto with me. I was going over to San Marco. And I was like, I just wanted to ask them, like, what the fuck is going on? Meanwhile, I found out there was an attack last night on the Academia Bridge.
Oh,
there were 2 Australians killed, stabbed.
Come on!
And it seems it was just a dispute between 2 couples who were out that evening, and it was just some sort of big dispute that turned into a big fight on the Academia.
Australians?
2 Australians, yeah. 2 Australian tourists.
So a foursome, a couple. And he found out that the other guy was fucking his wife.
Probably something like that, I don't know. I don't think it was anything related, because I know there are attacks happening. That little boy in Chicago and so on, and his mom were stabbed to death by the landlord. All Muslims must die, is what he said as he stabbed them. At first you think, is this spilling over now into little groups? And I thought, well, there is a prominent Jewish quarter here that is very important to the history of the city.
Sure.
And very sacred, and a beautiful area, honestly. And I
Canareggio, right?
Canareggio. And it was certain one half of Canareggio. But it seems that it has nothing to do with that. It just happened to be a kind of a dark dark day. But, all the cops are on high alert here. I guess there's the possibility that there are hate crimes happening. I'm not sure they are, but at least Brunaro, I should say, Brunaro, our mayor, put the cops out in the street to make sure there was none of that crap.
I feel
and there's the Carabinieri. They walk
safe
around
there.
Safe here, yes.
Oh, so safe there.
Yeah.
And the Carabinieri, I just love it. They're just the most beautiful things you've ever seen. Their uniform and the colors.
Their uniforms are really clean.
Oof.
No, and the guys.
I mean, if anybody has a uniform fetish, the Carabinieri are the ones you want to look at.
Yeah, right. I remember they stopped me when I came to look at the apartments. When I first moved to Venice.
Yeah, and
I went back. I had seen the apartment and shook hands and so on with the landlord. Turned out to be a dick in the end, but whatever, that's fine. And then I wound up going. I was going back. It's all on video, but I left out a big portion. I didn't want to distract from the message of the bizarreness of lockdown, but there is video there where they come over and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like, because I'm standing I'm talking to the camera, so on. I don't have a mask on. It was a heavy lockdown, and man, I was like 2 seconds from a boot on my head. Like on the ground. Wow. They don't fuck around here, man. They're hard. I mean, they dealt with the mafia for years. Like, these are guys who fucking kidnap you and melt your body down in a fucking bath of acid. Like, it's hardcore. They don't mess around. These lads look pretty serious. And I was so tempted to say, listen, what the fuck is going on? But I think it was just that. I didn't say a word. I didn't want them fucking, I don't know, turning their attention on me, and you get a little bit of paranoia in those moments. I'm like, oh fuck, I don't know.
I'm the type of guy that I always feel like the police are looking at me in the supermarket because they think I'm shoplifting. I always feel that, and that's when I felt when I met Obama, and I was in the Gap, and I had all these like guys with like little the little speakers in their ears, the little earphones. Yeah. They were staring at me. I was like, fuck, do they think I'm shoplifting? I was so upset.
You're guilty, and then you're guilty. Yeah.
Then I realized when I saw like 4 of them, I went, oh, wait a second. I said, what is POTUS around? And that's when I met Obama.
I see. Yeah, there's that feeling, like, because there's tons of cops around, you begin to feel like, oh, what did I do?
What did I do?
But no, but in all seriousness, I thought it was a good conversation. It's good to see the sides of it, and I certainly sympathize with Mitra because all she said, she voiced her opinion for people who have been brutalized for 75 years. Sure. And all of a sudden she's a fucking terrorist sympathizer. Like, it's like, come on, man, it's fucked up.
Well, that's because they can't see her point of view in any way, shape, or form because they refuse to, and that's all it is, people. When you're unwilling to listen to somebody else's point of view, that's what it comes down to, and that's always wrong because someone's story might correct yours, and it often does.
Be careful with apathy, though, on that, because, there is someone who's right and wrong. I mean, imagine going back to Germany or Poland in the 30s. There were 2 points of view then. Are you going to listen to one of them? I think one of them we don't even know.
I think it's nuanced like this is. I think that, there's no 2 sides to Hitler.
There isn't now, but at the time there was. That's what I'm saying. Like, at the time there was, you were a problem if you spoke out against that, and some brave men did, and they were unpopular, and if they had a YouTube channel, they would have had people unsubscribing then too. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. My sister says, Mommy made us paranoid about shoplifting at Bloomingdale's. That's my sister. That's very funny. Well, thanks, Gary.
Anyway. Hey, listen, everybody who stuck out that conversation, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, that was good. I mean, it got heavy. It's an important conversation to have. I hope some of you found it interesting, insightful in some way.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to talk about the Taiwanese conflict in China. Okay. Just kidding.
Just to balance it out. Rufus, $1.99. Thank you.
Thank you, Rufus. We made $2. Yay.
Benzo, $1.99.
$4.
Thanks, guys.
Yay.
We're up to $4 now. No, Rutger H. Are you Rutger
Oh,
R?
wow.
$9.99. It's good that you keep addressing the conceptual distinction between justifying and explaining. Yeah, it's a very important thing. In these cases, descriptive thought must guide moral thoughts, not vice versa. That's a great point. Thank you, Rutger. If you're still there, I know I'm coming back to the super chats very, very late. Brian Bile, $4.99, $5. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christian, thank you for hosting this important discussion. Not an easy one, but much needed. Well, thank you, brother. It's a tough one to do.
People don't want to hear it. That's why.
Some people don't want to hear it. Some people do want to hear it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Hey, it's an ongoing thing, and it turns out to be a pretty important discussion on the grand scale of things. Hopefully, it doesn't lead to anything escalated, but if it does, at least we know we've talked about it. It's already escalated. What am I talking about? So
it sure
anyway,
is. Well, now it's being backpedaled a little bit, but hey, that's not a bad thing right now. Might save a couple of lives.
It was a pretty good eyelashes. Almost zero jokes, but I do like the quips. I do like John's quips, and
he's very good.
Insights. Yeah,
he's very, very good.
Yeah, and I'll say it again. Mitra was excellent too. Think about the info she has on history; it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
and if you follow her on Instagram, she knows so much about Rome and the history.
You know what it is? She's used to leading the class. That's what it was.
Oh right, sure.
She's used to just
teacher.
walking. She's the teacher.
She's the teacher. So, she has all the details and so on.
I mean, this format of show usually is, a little bit of give and take, and
this is one of the secret moderators of the channel. Watches Brian, great Jewish comrade, and
thanks,
a brilliant, insightful human being who I also have to thank for a wonderful birthday present, because when I got home, his gift for my 50th was in the mail, and it was a bunch of cigars. I was smoking one tonight. I smoked a Monte Cristo. Yeah. So thank you, Brian. You're the man. Peace, love, and watches. We love that. All right, guys. Thanks for sticking out through this. It was a good audience. 500 was at the top point.
It stayed over 400 for almost the whole thing.
Yeah. Wonderful stuff. And this is Eyebashers, guys. It's not watch content. Even though John's a watch guy.
Watches.
We are
wearing watches.
And I wish I could have gotten on to, maybe in the future I'll have Mitra on for wine and Rome history and Italian history, because she truly is an expert. She makes me look like an amateur completely with that stuff. And if I do go to Rome and do an episode, she's definitely going to be part of it, whether you like it or not, Darren.
No. I was trying to. I don't think anybody really got a good enough setup of who she is and why she was there. If she just went for it, you know what I mean? There was no setup time. Like,
is that my fault? That's my fault.
Who she is, why
she's
I was
here. Talking about how I've been attacked for voicing my opinion, and there's another person who's in Italy who was attacked for it. So that was the whole thing.
That's why I was asking. Okay, you're Swedish and Iranian, but you live in Rome. How? Why? I was just trying to.
Well, I'm Irish and I live in Italy, and what the fuck do I have to do?
Yeah, but you're not guesting on somebody's show about that and saying that the Carabinieri are mean to me or whatever. You know what I mean? Okay. So anyway, she sounds like a scholar of sorts. And
there you go, Mark. Thank you. She was smarter than you, Dirk.
That's not too hard. She's definitely smarter than Dirk.
She's smarter than me, that's for sure. Yeah. My God.
Yeah.
Going through facts like
incredible speed. It was whoosh. Yeah. Yeah, I think
we have to pay her a compliment after that criticism of her. I think we came
not meant as a criticism.
She came in at a hot moment in her frustration.
It was flash paper.
They're trying to shut her down on Instagram for voicing her opinion. She's an expert on history. She has 20 years.
We
of
just
experience.
Problem was we didn't know why.
I knew why. Maybe you didn't know why.
None of us knew. And that the comments were just like, that was going on. I was trying to get a little word in edgeways, but that's maybe we should have had a little meeting set up beforehand. That would have been fine because she had a lot to offer.
I think she did. It was kind of eye-opening, but anyway, I honestly think we were honored. I'm honored to have the two of them, both
Likewise.
aspects. Yeah. Okay. On the show. Thank you, guys, for watching. That's another iBashers in the can. Pretty controversial one, I'm sure. Go over and subscribe to iBashers.
Controversy.
Controversy.
You gotta do that again. I'll do the low one.
No, but we won't be in sync.
No,
I'll
that's good.
watch it back. It'll be all
I love the way
over
Prince does that. Controversy. I love the way he does that. That's how he puts the sex in. Oh, I don't want to do that. My last name is Kennedy. I could never run for political office. Could never happen. I will get shot.
Good night, guys. Thank you all. And I'm sending you over to Tim Wright. I'll be talking about watches and much lighter stuff, and you'll have a lot of fun. I'll see you all. Thanks, Dirk. You're the man. See you this time next week. Every Wednesday, iBashers.
Same bash time, same bash channel.